They told Izuku Midoriya he was born worthless, quirkless, a nobody. And you know what? They were right. Izuku Midoriya was nothing. But the Shredder, oh, this armored son of a bitch rebuilt the entire world from scratch. And nobody stopped him.
Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
Every empire begins with a single moment, a choice made in the dark, a hand reaching for something the world said it could never have. This is the story of Izuku Midoriya, the boy who was told he was nothing, who vanished into the earth and who returned wearing the armor of a dead empire. This is not a hero's journey. This is a conqueror's rise. And every last soul who stood in his way learned the same lesson. You do not stand in the way of the Shredder. You kneel, or you break. It started the way it always did. With Katsuki Bakugo, the afternoon sun cut low through the trees of Dagoba Municipal Park, the wild part, the part the city forgot about, where the trails turned to dirt and the dirt turned to nothing. Izuku Midoriya was 10 years old, skinny, breathing hard, running as fast as his legs would carry him. Behind him, 3 boys. Bakugo in front, palms sparking, teeth bared like he was born angry, and never once considered being anything else. "Get back here, Midoriya!" Izuku didn't answer. He ran. Branches cut his face. His sneakers slipped on moss. He could hear the explosions, small ones, warning shots that cracked the bark off trees and sent birds scattering into the sky. He didn't look back. Looking back was how you got caught. He'd learned that lesson at age 6. Burned into his forearm. Literally. The other 2 boys, Tsubasa and that kid with the long fingers, whose name Izuku never cared enough to remember, split off to flank him. They always flanked. Bakugo ran straight because Bakugo only knew straight. But the other 2 had been doing this long enough to be tactical about it. Izuku cut left. Hard. Through a gap in the undergrowth that looked like solid thicket, but actually had about 2 feet of space between the roots. He squeezed through. Tsubasa tried to follow and got his wing caught on a branch. That bought Izuku maybe 5 seconds. He used them. His foot hit something that looked like flat rock, a shelf of gray stone jutting out of the hillside. It should have been solid. It wasn't. His sneaker passed through it like it was made of smoke and light, and his entire body followed. He fell. Not far, maybe 8 feet, but he fell into darkness, hit something metallic, rolled, and slammed his back against a wall that hummed. Everything was black. Then everything was blue. Lights. Not electric lights. Something deeper. Something that pulsed like a heartbeat. They ran along the walls in thin veins of pale blue, climbing from the floor to the ceiling in patterns that weren't random. They were circuits. The room was enormous, bigger than his school gymnasium, carved out of solid rock but lined with metal panels that looked like they'd been there for centuries. Consoles. Screens. Pods filled with green liquid that he didn't want to look at too closely. Racks of weapons. Bladed, curved, ancient and alien at the same time. Izuku stood up slowly. His knees were shaking. His palms were scraped. Above him, the hologram rock sealed itself shut again. Bakugo's voice was muffled now, distant, furious, getting further away. He was alone. "You are injured." The voice came from everywhere. Izuku spun around. Nothing. No one. Then the largest console at the center of the room lit up and a hologram materialized above it. A figure in armor, massive, bladed, shoulders like a fortress. A helmet with a faceplate that looked like it could cut you just by staring. Behind the armor, barely visible, something alien, something small and fleshy and pink with too many tentacles, sat inside the chest cavity like a pilot in a cockpit. The hologram wasn't alive. It was a recording, but it spoke as if it could see him. "If you are seeing this," the hologram said, "then you are either the one I left this for, or you are already dead and simply refuse to acknowledge it." Izuku stared. His mouth was dry. The hologram spoke again. The voice was deep, measured, cold as a blade left in snow. I am Shrell. I am the Shredder. I ruled an empire that spanned worlds and centuries, and I was brought low by turtles and the arrogance of my own reach. But empires do not die when their rulers fall. They sleep, and they wait for someone worthy to wake them. The hologram turned, or seemed to. Its eyes, glowing red behind the faceplate, locked on the exact spot where Izuku was standing. This cavern contains the complete archive of the Foot Clan. My armor, my weapons, my technology, the knowledge of 1,000 conquered civilizations. All of it, waiting. All of it, yours, if you choose to take it. A panel on the console slid open. Inside, a single metal platform lit from below with a needle at its center. Thin as a hair, sharp as a promise. Place your hand on the platform. The system will bind to your DNA. The armor will answer only to you. The Foot Clan will live again through you. The hologram paused. When it spoke again, the voice dropped lower. But understand this. There is no halfway. There is no going back. You take this, and you are mine. My successor. My weapon. My legacy. The world above you right now. The one that chased you into the dark. That world will learn to fear the name you carry. Or it will burn. Silence. Izuku Midoriya stood in the blue light of a dead empire's last vault. 10 years old, scraped palms, torn shirt, a bruise on his ribs from where Bakugo had caught him 3 days ago. He thought about his mother, who cried every time she looked at him because she still felt guilty for the day the doctor said he was quirkless. He thought about Bakugo, who had once been his friend, and was now the person who made every single day feel like a war he was losing. He thought about All Might, who smiled from every poster and every screen and every billboard, and who had never, not once, come to save him. He thought about what it felt like to run. He put his hand on the platform. The needle fired, a sharp, clean sting, straight into his palm. His blood hit the system. The system recognized him. Every screen in the cavern turned on at once. Every console hummed to life. The weapons racks unlocked, the pods bubbled, the lights went from blue to blood red, and the hologram of Krell smiled. Good. We begin. Izuku Midoriya walked into that cavern as a frightened boy. He did not walk out as one. 2 years. That's how long it took. 730 days of training in a cavern beneath the city, guided by the recorded intelligence of something that had conquered galaxies. The AI wasn't Krell, not really. It was a fragment, a ghost in the machine. But it was enough. It was more than enough. The training began with pain. The first thing the AI did was assess his body. The result, inadequate. So the cavern's systems rebuilt him, not with surgery, not with injections, with discipline so brutal it would have broken a grown man in the first week. Every morning, and Izuku counted mornings by when the AI told him to wake up because there was no sun underground, he ran the perimeter of the cavern. 2 miles of uneven stone floor, sometimes in the dark, sometimes with obstacles that the AI raised from panels in the ground without warning. He ran until his legs burned. Then he ran more. Then the AI dropped the temperature to near freezing and made him run again, because, as it explained in Krell's cold, flat voice, a warrior who can only fight in comfort is already dead. Then came the forms. Ninjutsu isn't one thing. It's a system of systems. The AI ran him through all of it. Taijutsu, hand-to-hand combat, every strike, every block, every throw. He punched the stone walls of the cavern until his knuckles bled, and then he punched them again because the AI told him blood was irrelevant and form was everything. He learned to move his body like a weapon. Hips generating power, shoulders staying loose, feet always balanced, always ready to shift direction. Then weapons. The Foot Clan scrolls, displayed on hovering screens that tracked his eyes and adjusted position so he could read while he trained, contained techniques for every bladed weapon ever devised by human civilization, and a few that weren't human at all. Katana, wakizashi, tanto, kunai, shuriken, the clawed gauntlets that were the Shredder's signature, tekokagi, reimagined and upgraded with alien metallurgy that made them harder than anything on Earth. He trained with each weapon until it was part of his arm. By month 3, he could throw a shuriken and split a human hair at 20 meters. The AI told him this was adequate. The AI's standards were insane. By month 6, he could fight 4 combat drones simultaneously. Mechanical opponents the cavern manufactured from its own systems. Fast, relentless, armed with blunted blades that still hurt like hell when they connected, and win without taking a hit. By month 9, he stopped thinking about the moves. They were in his muscles, in his bones. He would react to a strike before he consciously registered it, his body flowing through counters and angles and devastating returns like water through broken glass. The AI called this state the zero mind. Izuku just called it Tuesday, but the real weapon, the one that changed everything, was the quirk. Izuku Midoriya's quirk, attraction of small objects. A pull, telekinetic, short range, limited to small things. In her hands, it was a trick for grabbing the TV remote from across the couch. In her son's hands, it became a nightmare. Izuku discovered the combat applications by accident during a sparring session with 3 drones. One of them held a short blade. Izuku reached out, instinct, desperation, and pulled. The blade ripped free from the drone's grip and flew into his hand. He killed the drone with its own weapon before his brain caught up with what had happened. The AI noticed. The AI noticed. Again, it said, isolate the mechanism, understand it, then break it. So Izuku did. Hour after hour, day after day. He learned to feel metal within his range, about 15 meters, like a sixth sense. Every bolt, every screw, every blade, every zipper, every piece of armor. He could feel them the way a normal person feels warmth from a fire. And he could pull, small pulls at first, a kunai from a rack across the room, a shuriken from the floor, then stronger, a gauntlet off a drone's arm, mid-swing, a helmet off a drone's head, 1 second before Izuku's fist caved in the exposed sensor array underneath. Then he got creative. He learned to pull in bursts, a dozen small objects at once, all converging on a single target from different angles. A cloud of shuriken, nails, bolts, and metal shards, all screaming toward an enemy's center mass like the world's most lethal shotgun blast. He learned to pull sideways, yanking an opponent's armored limb off-center, forcing them into a stumble, opening up a gap in their guard that lasted half a second. Half a second was all he needed. He learned to pull himself, anchoring the quirk on a heavy metal object and dragging his own body toward it, turning himself into a human missile. The first time he did this, he cracked 3 of his own ribs hitting a wall. The second time, he cracked a drone's chest plate instead. The AI watched all of this, recorded it, analyzed it, and said, "This quirk was wasted on your species. In your hands, it may yet be worthy of the foot." Izuku didn't smile. He'd stopped smiling around month 4. And then there was the armor. The shredder armor was kept in the deepest part of the cavern, behind 3 security doors that only opened for his DNA. It stood on a platform in a column of red light, shoulder blades like wings, forearm gauntlets lined with blades that could cut through reinforced steel, a helmet with a faceplate that turned the wearer's eyes into burning red slits, and a chest plate inlaid with Utrom technology that was centuries ahead of anything on Earth. The armor wasn't just protection, it was a weapon system. The blades were retractable. The gauntlets could channel kinetic energy and redirect it. The helmet contained a heads-up display that tracked movement, analyzed quirks in real time, and calculated optimal strike vectors faster than any human brain could manage. The boots had impact dampeners that let the wearer drop from a 10-story building and land in a crouch without breaking an ankle. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was his. The first time Izuku put it on, the AI activated a recording. Trell's voice speaking directly to whoever would wear the armor next. "You are the Shredder now, the last of my line. The Empire is yours to rebuild, the clan is yours to command, and the world, whatever world you stand on, is yours to conquer." Izuku stood in the red light, armored from head to toe, blades gleaming, eyes burning behind the faceplate. He was 12 years old. He was ready. He went home. Or he tried to, because there was no home to go back to. 2 years underground, no phone, no contact, no way for anyone to know he was alive. The AI had sustained him. Food synthesized from organic matter, water filtered from underground streams, medical treatment when training broke something that needed fixing. But the AI had no connection to the world above. It didn't care about the world above. The world above was a conquest target, nothing more. Izuku emerged from the cavern on a warm April evening wearing civilian clothes he'd found in a supply locker, plain black, no logos, the kind of thing a ghost would wear. He walked through the park. The trees were taller, the city lights were the same, everything felt smaller. He walked to his apartment building. He climbed the stairs. He stood in front of his door. It was sealed. Police tape, yellowed with age, crossed the frame in a pattern that said this hadn't been touched in a long time. He broke the seal. He went inside. The apartment was empty. Cleared out. The furniture was gone. The pictures were gone. His All Might posters, every single one, were gone. The walls were bare. The air smelled like dust and disinfectant, and something underneath both of those things that he recognized immediately because the AI had taught him what death smelled like. He found the letter on the kitchen counter, not the letter she wrote that had been taken by police as evidence. This was a printout from a case file left behind by someone careless or cruel. A summary: Izuku Midoriya, cause of death, self-inflicted. Date: 14 months after her son's disappearance. Notes: subject exhibited signs of prolonged grief, refused psychiatric treatment, was found by a neighbor after failing to answer her door for 3 days. The apartment showed signs of obsessive behavior, missing persons flyers covering every wall, phone records showing hundreds of calls to police, to heroes, to anyone who might listen. No one had listened. Izuku read the summary twice. His hands didn't shake, his eyes didn't water. Everything he might have felt, the scream, the collapse, the shaking, all of it hit a wall somewhere inside him and stopped. The boy who would have cried was still in the cavern. The thing that walked out was something else. He set the paper down. He stood in his mother's empty kitchen for a long time. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have been faster." That was the last time Izuku Midoriya used the word sorry. He left the apartment. He went back to the cavern. He sealed the entrance. He sat in the shredder armor, in the dark, in the silence, and he let the last piece of the boy he used to be die. What was buried with it was soft. What was left was iron. The next morning, the AI asked him what his orders were. He said, "Begin." Now, you need to understand something about the criminal underworld in Japan during this period. It was fractured. The old Yakuza families had been declining for decades. Quirks had shifted the power balance. The people running organized crime in this era weren't businessmen in suits. They were quirk users with god complexes, running paramilitary organizations out of compounds that looked like small nations. The biggest and most dangerous of these was the Shi Hasaikai, run by Kai Chisaki, the man who called himself Overhaul, a neat freak, a control freak, and a genuine psychopath who had built his entire operation around a single goal: erasing quirks from the world. He had the resources, he had the soldiers, and he had the weapon. A little girl locked in a basement whose blood could undo anything, and whose screams had gone unheard for years. The Shredder didn't care about Overhaul's philosophy. He didn't care about his goals or his trauma or his loyalty to the old boss rotting in a hospital bed. He cared about two things. One, the Shi Hasaikai had resources he wanted: weapons, money, territory, supply lines that stretched across the country. Two, the Shi Hasaikai had a little girl in a basement, and even a conqueror has a line. He hit them on a Thursday night. The compound was a fortress. 3 layers of security. Outer walls manned by quirk-using enforcers on rotating patrol, an inner courtyard with motion sensor turrets, quirk-enhanced, capable of tracking and firing on anything that moved faster than a slow walk. And beneath the courtyard, a network of underground tunnels that contained the labs, the drug operation, and the girl. The Shredder came alone. He didn't announce himself. He didn't give a warning. He dropped from the outer wall in complete silence, boots hitting concrete without a sound, the impact dampeners in his armor absorbing the fall like it was nothing. The first guard turned a corner and saw a pair of red eyes in the dark. He opened his mouth to shout. The Shredder's hand closed over his face. He slammed the guard into the wall so hard the concrete cracked. The guard went limp. His radio was in the Shredder's other hand before the body hit the ground, pulled by a flick of the quirk. He crushed it. The second guard was 30 feet away, walking the other direction. The Shredder pulled the sheathed knife from the unconscious guard's belt, felt its weight for a fraction of a second, and threw it. The handle hit the second guard in the temple. He dropped without a sound. Third, fourth, fifth, all in the first 90 seconds. All silent. The Shredder moved through the outer perimeter like something that belonged to the dark. Not sneaking, not hiding, Just faster, quieter, and more violent than anything those guards had ever encountered. The inner courtyard was the problem. The turrets tracked movement. They didn't care about stealth. They cared about physics. Anything above a certain mass moving above a certain speed got shot. The Shredder studied the courtyard from the shadows for exactly 4 seconds. Then he ripped every bolt, every screw, every small metal component from the turrets simultaneously. His quirk fired like a pulse, and 100 pieces of metal tore free from the turret housings at once. The turrets collapsed. One of them sparked. Another one sagged on its mount and fired into the ground uselessly. The courtyard was open. He walked through it. The entrance to the underground was a reinforced steel door. He put his gauntlet blades against it, found the seam, and dragged. The blades, Utrom forged, harder than anything Overhaul's builders had ever imagined, cut through the steel like a hot edge through wax. He pulled the door open. The hallway beyond was lit with fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered. Inside the compound, they finally knew he was there. Alarms, shouting, footsteps. The Shaiha Saikai's soldiers came pouring down the corridors, masks on, quirks active, armed and loud and confident because they had never lost a fight on their own ground. That record was about to end. The first wave was 4 men. One of them had a quirk that turned his arms into stone. He swung at the Shredder's head, a big, heavy, committed strike. The Shredder stepped inside the swing. The stone fist passed over his shoulder. His forearm blade punched through the man's stone bicep. The alien metal didn't care about the quirk, and he twisted. The stone cracked. The man screamed. The Shredder kicked him in the chest and sent him flying backward into 2 of his allies. They went down in a pile. The 4th man, a ranged attacker, some kind of air pressure quirk that shot concussive blasts fired from 20 feet away. The Shredder sidestepped, closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed the man by the wrist and broke it. The man's quirk fired involuntarily, straight into the ceiling. Dust and debris rained down. The Shredder let the man fall and kept walking. They kept coming. 5 more. Then 6. Then a squad of 8 that had formed up at a choke point, 2 with shields, the rest behind them with ranged quirks and firearms. The Shredder stopped. He looked at them. They looked at him, red eyes burning behind that faceplate, blades dripping, not even breathing hard. He raised one hand and pulled. Every metallic object on their bodies answered him. Belt buckles, zippers, armor plating, guns, knives, everything metal lurched toward him at once. Men stumbled forward, shields ripped free from grips. Guns yanked out of holsters and skittered across the floor toward his feet. In half a second, they were disarmed and off balance. He hit them before they recovered. It wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. 3 went down from strikes they never saw: throat, solar plexus, knee. 2 more crumpled when the Shredder caught their heads and drove them together. One tried to activate a quirk that hardened his skin, and the Shredder just hit him harder. The hardened skin cracked like ceramic. The last 2 ran. He let them run. They'd carry the message. Deeper. Darker. Downstairs that groaned under his armored weight. Past laboratories filled with equipment he recognized from the AI's analysis, drug synthesis, quirk factor extraction, things that belonged in nightmares. He destroyed the labs as he passed through. A sweep of his arm sent equipment crashing. A pull of his quirk tore the plumbing from the walls. Water and chemicals flooded the floors. And then he found Overhaul. Kai Chisaki stood in the center of his personal chamber, immaculate, white gloves pristine, plague mask fitted tight over his face. Behind him, the door to the room where the girl was kept. He was calm, disgustingly calm, the kind of calm that comes from absolute confidence in your own power. "You've caused a mess," Chisaki said. "I don't like messes." The Shredder stopped 10 feet from him. The red eyes behind the faceplate were steady. "You are Overhaul," the Shredder said. His voice filled the room, low, cold, heavy. "You harvest children for profit. You cage the innocent to fuel your ambitions." Chisaki tilted his head. "You sound like a hero. Are you a hero?" "I am the end of your world," Chisaki sighed. He pulled off one glove, slowly, deliberately, letting the Shredder see his bare hand. The fingers were long. The nails were clean. The quirk was ready. "One touch," Chisaki said. "That's all I need. I'll take you apart at the molecular level and put you back together as something useful. A floor tile, maybe. Something flat and quiet." He lunged. Fast. Faster than he looked, because Chisaki was a trained fighter on top of everything else. His hand shot out, fingers spread, reaching for the Shredder's chest plate. The Shredder's quirk fired. Chisaki felt it immediately, his remaining glove ripping off his other hand, yanked by an invisible force. But that wasn't the real pull. The real pull was on his rings, 2 of them, gold, on his left hand. They wrenched sideways so hard they dislocated his ring finger and pinky before tearing free and flying into the Shredder's waiting hand. Chisaki gasped. His lunge faltered. His balance shifted. That half-second was all it took. The Shredder's gauntlet blade came down across Chisaki's reaching wrist. Not to sever, to pin. The blade bit into flesh and bone and drove Chisaki's hand into the concrete floor. Chisaki screamed. His quirk activated instinctively. The concrete around the blade erupted, reformed, tried to swallow the gauntlet. The Shredder twisted the blade and ripped it free, tearing a chunk of concrete and a strip of Chisaki's palm with it. Chisaki stumbled backward, one hand ruined, blood running down his fingers. His eyes were wide above the mask. This wasn't how fights went for him. He touched things and they stopped existing. That was the deal. That was the rule. Nobody had ever told the Shredder the rules. Chisaki slammed his intact hand against the floor. The ground erupted, spikes of stone and rebar, a wave of reconstructed material surging toward the Shredder like a tidal wave of concrete teeth. The Shredder jumped. Straight up, off one spike, then another, then a third, using each piece of debris as a stepping stone, his movement faster than the reconstruction could track. He cleared the wave, came down on the other side, and drove his knee into Chisaki's sternum. The impact folded Chisaki in half. He hit the ground on his back. The Shredder's boot came down on his intact hand, pinning it, grinding the fingers against the floor. Chisaki screamed again, higher this time, the mask muffling nothing. "You won't touch anyone again," the Shredder said. He reached down and broke Chisaki's fingers. Completely. Every one. Starting with the thumb. Chisaki thrashed and howled and tried to activate his quirk through the pain, but the Shredder's weight on his hand was total, and the agony was too much to focus through. When it was done, the Shredder stood. Chisaki lay on the floor of his own fortress, both hands destroyed. His empire shattered, his soldiers beaten, his legacy over. He was breathing in short, wet gasps. The Shredder looked down at him. "You had an empire," he said. "You wasted it on cruelty. That is the difference between us. I build. You only know how to take apart." He turned and walked to the door behind Chisaki. He opened it. The room was small, cold, bare. A medical table with restraints, syringes on a tray, and in the corner, huddled in a ball, wrapped in a thin blanket that hadn't been washed in weeks, a little girl with white hair and a single red horn, and the biggest, most terrified eyes Izuku had ever seen. She looked up at him. She saw the armor, the blades, the red eyes, and she flinched so hard she pressed herself into the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. The Shredder stood in the doorway. He was 6 feet of bladed metal and violence. He had just torn through a criminal army and shattered its leader with his bare hands. He was the most dangerous thing in the building. He knelt, slowly. The armor scraped against the floor, the blades retracted into his gauntlets with a soft click. He reached up and removed the helmet. Underneath, a face. Young, scarred from training. Green eyes that still, despite everything, held something human. "My name is Izuku," he said. His voice was soft, quiet, the same voice but stripped of every edge. "I'm going to take you out of here. Nobody is going to hurt you again." The girl stared at him. Her lip trembled. "Promise?" she whispered. "Promise." She reached out one small hand. He took it. Her fingers were freezing. He picked her up carefully so the armor's edges wouldn't scratch her and held her against his chest. She weighed nothing. She was shaking. He carried her out, past the wrecked labs, past the groaning soldiers, past the broken turrets and the cracked walls and the bleeding men who crawled out of his way as he walked. The criminal underworld heard about what happened to the Shiha Saikai before sunrise. By noon, every gang boss, every underground fixer, every black market dealer in Japan knew the details. A single attacker. Armored, bladed, unstoppable. He'd gone through the most fortified criminal compound in the country like it was made of paper. He'd destroyed Overhaul. The man nobody touched and walked out carrying a child. They didn't know his name yet. They would. He named her Kurai, not Eri. Eri was the name they'd given her in the cage. The name on the medical charts. The name Chisaki's people used when they strapped her down and drew her blood. That name belonged to a prisoner. The Shredder didn't save a prisoner. He adopted a princess, Kurai. It meant darkness in the old tongue. But the way he said it, it sounded like shelter. He brought her to the cavern. He gave her a room, cleared one of the storage bays, lined it with supplies he'd taken from the Hasai Kai compound, installed a bed and lights and a screen where she could watch whatever she wanted. It wasn't much. It was more than she'd ever had. She didn't speak for the first 3 days. She sat on the bed with her knees pulled up and watched him with those enormous red eyes, tracking every movement like she was waiting for the moment he'd stop pretending and become what she expected. Another person, with a use for her blood. He cooked for her. Simple things: rice, eggs, miso soup. The AI's food synthesis was efficient, but it tasted like nutrition, not comfort. Izuku remembered what his mother used to make, and he tried. The eggs were overcooked the first time. The soup was too salty. Kurai ate every bite like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted, because it might have been. On the 4th day, she spoke. "Are you a hero?" He was cleaning his gauntlet blades at the central console, the armor's torso open on the maintenance rack. He looked at her. She was standing in the doorway of her room, bare feet on the metal floor, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. "No," he said. "Are you a villain?" "No." She thought about that. "What are you?" He set down the blade. "I am the Shredder. I am the leader of the Foot Clan, and you are Kurai, the princess of the Foot Clan. That means nobody touches you. Ever." She blinked. "Princess?" "Princess." A small, confused, uncertain smile. The first one she'd ever given anyone. It lasted about 2 seconds before she pulled the blanket tighter and retreated back to her room, but she came back the next day, and the day after that. And eventually she stopped flinching when he moved suddenly, and she stopped watching the door like she expected someone to come through it and take her back, and she started asking questions about the cavern and the armor and the blue lights on the walls. He answered every one. The contrast was the thing. The world above knew the Shredder as a nightmare. Bladed, cold, merciless. The thing that had gutted the Shiha Saikai and left its leader crawling. The criminal underworld whispered about him in the present tense, like a natural disaster you couldn't predict and couldn't survive. But Kurai knew a different version. The version that sat on the floor with her and explained how the Utrom technology worked in terms a 6-year-old could understand. The version that let her sit on his lap while he reviewed intelligence reports, her small hands tracing the holographic maps. The version that, one night when she woke up screaming from a nightmare about needles and white rooms, picked her up without a word and held her until she fell back asleep. He was both things. The conqueror and the caretaker. The blades and the blanket. And he would burn the entire world to ashes before he let anyone take her from him. The UA Sports Festival happened. The Shredder watched it on a screen in the cavern, Kurai asleep on the couch next to him. He watched the students fight and struggle and show off for the cameras, and he saw exactly what it was, a cattle auction. Children performing for the entertainment of adults who would rank them, sort them, and use them. He watched Katsuki Bakugo win the tournament, standing on the podium in chains because he wouldn't stop screaming about how his victory wasn't good enough, and felt nothing. Bakugo was loud and angry and powerful and entirely predictable. He was a weapon without a wielder, a bomb that would eventually blow up in the wrong direction. He watched Shoto Todoroki fight with half his power because of daddy issues, and he felt even less. Waste. Pure, stupid waste. He watched Mina Ashido dance through her fights, all fluid movement and acid, and a grin that never dropped, and he paused. That one was different. He filed it away. The USJ incident changed everything. Not for the League of Villains. Not for the students. For the Shredder. Because the USJ incident was the moment he stepped onto the stage and the stage cracked under his weight. Here's what happened. The League of Villains, Tamura Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and their assembled cannon fodder attacked the unforeseen simulation joint during a Class 1A training exercise. The plan was simple. Kill All Might. The weapon was the Nomu, a bioengineered nightmare designed to absorb and tank anything the symbol of peace could throw. The strategy was overwhelming force plus a warp gate for escape. It was, on paper, a decent plan. The League had numbers. They had the Nomu. They had the element of surprise. What they didn't have was intelligence, real intelligence, because the Shredder had been monitoring UA's communications for weeks through Utrom tech that piggybacked on their security frequencies, and he knew about the attack before the League even mobilized. He knew the target, he knew the route, he knew the timing. He didn't intervene to help the students. He intervened because Shigaraki was operating on territory he intended to claim, and you don't let amateurs burn down what you plan to own. The attack hit at 11:47 a.m. By 11:52, the students were scattered across the facility, fighting for their lives against groups of low-tier villains. Eraserhead was on the ground floor, engaging the main force with characteristic efficiency and rapidly declining stamina. Shigaraki stood at the center of the plaza, hands twitching, watching the chaos like a kid pulling wings off flies. At 11:54, the main entrance of the USJ, the massive armored door at the top of the staircase buckled inward. Not opened, buckled. Something hit it from the outside hard enough to warp the steel. Then it happened again, and again. On the fourth impact, the door blew off its hinges and crashed down the stairs, bouncing once, twice, and slamming into the concrete floor of the plaza hard enough to crack it. Every fight in the facility paused. Every head turned. The Shredder stood at the top of the stairs, full armor, every blade extended. The helmet's red eyes cutting through the dust like signal fires. He stood perfectly still, surveying the battlefield below with the posture of someone who had walked into 100 war zones and found every single one of them boring. Shigaraki turned. His eyes narrowed behind the hand attached to his face. "Who the hell are you?" The Shredder didn't answer. He walked down the stairs. Each step was slow, deliberate. The armored boots rang against the metal like a countdown. The villains near the bottom of the stairs, 3 of them, armed, quirks active, moved to intercept. The first one threw a punch. The Shredder caught the fist, twisted, and threw the man over his shoulder into the second villain. They went down in a tangle. The third one activated a fire quirk, a stream of flame aimed directly at the Shredder's chest. The flame hit the armor and did nothing. Utrom metallurgy. The Shredder walked through the fire, grabbed the villain by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and threw him 30 feet into the wall of the flood zone. The impact left a crater. He kept walking. Eraserhead on one knee, bleeding from a gash above his eye, looked up at the armored figure passing him without a glance. "Who? Stay down," the Shredder said. "This is not your fight anymore." His voice carried. Not just to Eraserhead, to everyone. The students scattered across the facility heard it through the echoes. The villains heard it. Shigaraki heard it. The Shredder stopped 10 feet from Shigaraki. The distance was deliberate, close enough to be personal, far enough to be insulting. "You call yourself a villain?" the Shredder said. Shigaraki's fingers twitched. The hand on his face, his comfort, his father's hand, trembled slightly. "You have a handful of expendable thugs, a single engineered weapon, and a plan that relies entirely on a hero who isn't here. You have no territory, no resources, no loyalty from anyone who matters. You are a petulant child playing a game the adults retired from years ago." Shigaraki's voice came out thin, strained. "You don't know what I am. I know exactly what you are. You are someone else's weapon who thinks he's a general." That landed. That landed hard. Shigaraki's fingers flexed open, all 5, both hands, the decay quirk primed and ready. His face behind the hand twisted into something rabid. "I'll kill you!" He lunged, both hands reaching, fingers spread, going for the Shredder's neck, his arms, anything he could touch, and turn to dust. The Shredder moved. His right forearm blade came up in a tight arc, not a block, but an interception. The blade sliced through Shigaraki's left palm, entering between the index and middle fingers and exiting between the ring and pinky. The hand split. Skin, tendon, and muscle parted around the alien-forged edge like wet cloth. Blood sprayed in a wide arc across the concrete. Shigaraki screamed. His left hand was ruined. 2 halves of a palm, fingers splayed at wrong angles, useless. He swung his right hand, desperate now, the remaining fingers reaching for the Shredder's face. The Shredder's left gauntlet blade was already moving. Same cut, same precision, between the fingers, through the palm. Shigaraki's right hand opened up like a butterfly pinned to a board. Both hands destroyed. In less than 2 seconds, Shigaraki staggered backward, holding his shredded palms up in front of his face, staring at them with an expression that went beyond pain into something like existential horror. His quirk was his hands. His identity was his hands, and they were split open, pouring blood, the fingers twitching uselessly. He screamed, a real scream, raw, cracked. The sound of someone whose entire self-concept just got gutted. Kurogiri! Kurogiri! Get me out! Get me out now! The Warp Gate villain materialized behind Shigaraki instantly. He'd been watching. He'd seen the speed, the precision, the absolute zero hesitation. His yellow eyes inside the black mist were wide. He opened the portal without a word. Shigaraki stumbled backward into it, still screaming, still holding up his destroyed hands. The Nomu activated. The massive creature, shock absorption, super regeneration, brain exposed and eyes blank, turned its bulk toward the shredder and charged. The ground shook. The thing was enormous. It was designed to fight All Might. It was the League's ace. The shredder looked at it. Then he looked at Kurogiri, who was holding the portal open, sweating. Take your pet, the shredder said. Go. Kurogiri didn't argue. He expanded the portal, the Nomu lumbered through, and the warp gate snapped shut. The plaza was silent. Blood on the concrete, cracks in the walls, the door at the top of the stairs still missing. And the shredder, standing alone in the center of it all, not a single mark on his armor, not a single blade out of place. From somewhere in the ruins, the collapse zone, where a group of students had been fighting off a pack of thugs, a voice carried clearly across the devastated facility. Eijiro Kirishima, staring at the empty spot where Shigaraki had been standing 3 seconds ago. He ran, Kirishima said. His voice was a mixture of shock and something that might have been awe. He literally ran, like a Kirishima, Tsuyuasui said flatly, like a bitch. The silence that followed was deafening. And then, from across the facility, muffled by walls and debris, someone laughed, short, sharp, disbelieving. The shredder did not acknowledge any of this. He turned and looked at the students. His gaze swept across them. Kirishima, Asui, Kaminari, Yaoyorozu, Todoroki, Bakugo, and found nothing that interested him. He turned and walked toward the wrecked entrance. Eraserhead was still on one knee. He watched the armored figure pass. Wait, the shredder paused. I need a name, Eraserhead said. The shredder didn't turn. The shredder. He walked out, through the wrecked door, into the sunlight, and was gone. The heroes arrived 4 minutes later. All Might, Present Mike Snipe Ectoplasm, the cavalry, late to their own disaster. They found a traumatized class, a bleeding Eraserhead, a plaza that looked like a war zone, and no villains. All Might looked at the blood, at the pattern of it, the double arc, the arterial spray. He looked at Eraserhead. What happened? Eraserhead stared at the spot where the shredder had stood. I don't know, but whatever it was, the League of Villains is terrified of it. Later, in the principal's office, Nezu watched the security footage 7 times. He watched the shredder walk through the door. He watched the cuts. He watched Shigaraki's hands split apart. He watched the complete, utter dominance. He paused on a single frame. The shredder's posture, the way he carried his weight, the slight forward lean that suggested a body much lighter and younger than the armor made it appear. And his black eyes narrowed. How old, Nezu murmured to himself, is the person inside that armor? He didn't share the thought with anyone. He stored it, because Nezu didn't react to threats. He cataloged them, and the shredder had just moved to the top of a very short list. The news cycle went insane. No one had footage of the USJ incident itself. The shredder had fried the security cameras with an EMP pulse from his armor before entering, but the aftermath was enough. The wrecked facility, the blood, the students' testimonies, which were inconsistent and panicked, and uniformly included the phrase armored figure and blades. Shigaraki's hands became a whisper in the villain underworld. Someone had sliced the leader of the League of Villains' most important weapons into useless ribbons, and that someone had walked away without a scratch. The street-level criminals heard it and got quiet. The mid-tier operators heard it and started reinforcing their compounds. The top-tier players, the ones who thought they were untouchable, heard it and started making phone calls. The hero world heard it too, and their response was predictable: denial. The Hero Public Safety Commission released a statement crediting the USJ defense to the quick action of UA staff and the bravery of the students. The Shredder was not mentioned. The blood on the floor was attributed to a villain who was injured during the confrontation. Nobody believed it. The internet exploded. Forums, chat rooms, conspiracy boards. People were calling the armored figure everything from a vigilante to a demon to an urban legend. Shaky drawings based on student descriptions circulated on social media. Someone on a hero analysis forum coined the term Blade Ghost. It didn't stick. The students who'd been there used a different name, the one Eraserhead had been given, the Shredder. Mina Ashido didn't hear about the USJ incident until 2 days later. She'd been off campus, personal leave. That's what the paperwork said. The reality was more complicated and much uglier. There was a man, someone powerful, someone connected, someone whose name appeared on the donor rolls of 3 different hero agencies and the Hero Public Safety Commission's annual gala invitation list. He cornered her after a training exercise. He used his position. He used his quirk, something that dulled reaction time, slowed the body, made resistance feel like swimming through concrete. Mina fought. Of course she fought. She was Mina Ashido. She'd been fighting since middle school. She'd earned her spot at UA through sheer guts and acid, and she didn't know how to stop swinging. But his quirk was stronger, and he was bigger, and it happened in a part of the building where the cameras had been malfunctioning for 6 months. She reported it. She sat in a cold chair in a cold office and told a woman with a clipboard exactly what happened. The woman wrote things down. The woman made a phone call. The woman came back and told Mina that the investigation would be handled internally. Mina waited. A week, 2 weeks, a month. The investigation died. The man's name disappeared from the file. Mina was called back into the office and told, politely, firmly, with a smile that never reached the eyes, that the evidence was insufficient, that pursuing the matter further could jeopardize her enrollment, and that sometimes the best thing for everyone is to move forward. Mina left the office. She walked to her dorm room. She sat on her bed. She cried. Not because she was weak. Crying isn't weak, and anyone who thinks so has never been through what she went through. But because the system she had spent her entire life trying to be part of had looked at her pain, and decided it wasn't worth the paperwork, she stopped going to class. She stopped training. She stopped smiling. And if you knew Mina Ashido, you knew that was the most alarming thing of all. Her classmates noticed. Kirishima tried to talk to her. She shut him out. Kaminari brought her food. She didn't eat it. Hagakure left notes under her door. They went unread. The person who actually reached her was the last one anyone expected. It happened at 3 a.m. Mina was sitting on the roof of the dormitory, feet dangling over the edge, staring at the city. She wasn't going to jump. She was too angry to die, but she was thinking about leaving, dropping out, disappearing. A voice from the shadows behind her, cold, flat, final. You are wasting yourself. She spun around. The figure emerged from the dark, armored, bladed, red eyes glowing behind a helmet that looked like it could eat the moonlight. The Shredder, on the roof of the UA dormitory, standing 5 feet from a student who should have screamed, should have hit the alarm, should have done anything except what she actually did. She laughed. "Oh, that's rich," she said. "The Blade Ghost, the boogeyman, standing on my school's roof in the middle of the night. Cool, great, what do you want?" "I know what happened to you." The laughter died. Her gold eyes went sharp. "Yeah? Then you know more than the commission does, or pretends to. I know the name of the man who attacked you. I know who covered it up. I know who signed the order to kill the investigation, and I know that you reported it to every authority you could reach, and every single one of them chose his career over your justice." Silence. The wind moved across the rooftop. "Why do you care?" Mina asked. Her voice was flat now, empty. "Because I am building something, an organization that does not answer to the commission or the hero agencies or the people who decide which crimes matter and which crimes disappear. I am building the Foot Clan, and I am looking for soldiers, real soldiers, not products of a system that chews people up and calls it heroism." He paused. "You have talent. Speed, instinct, a fighting style that nobody in this school understands because they've never seen capoeira weaponized with acid. You are dangerous in a way this school will never cultivate because they are too busy teaching you to smile for cameras and follow rules written by the people who hurt you. Mina stared at him for a long time. The helmet reflected the city lights. The blades on his gauntlets caught the moonlight. If I say yes, she said, what happens? You train, you fight, you answer to me and to no one else. And the man who attacked you, he answers for what he did, personally. You do that. It is already being arranged. Something shifted in Mina's expression. The emptiness receded. In its place, a fire, old, burned down to coals, but not dead. When do I start? The shredder extended his hand. She took it. The man who had attacked Mina Ashido was found 3 days later in a park near his luxury apartment. His quirk, the one that dulled reactions, slowed the body, was gone. Not destroyed. Erased. The shredder had used Utrom technology to overload the man's quirk factor, burning out the biological mechanism permanently. The man was alive, conscious, and, for the first time in his privileged life, completely powerless. He was also nailed to a park bench by 4 kunai driven through his expensive suit into the wood, pinned like an insect in a display case. A note was attached to his chest with a 5th kunai. This man attacked a student under the protection of the Hero Public Safety Commission. The commission chose to protect him. The Foot Clan chose otherwise. Consider this a correction. The police found him at dawn. He was shaking. He wouldn't speak for 3 days. When he finally did, he resigned from every position he held, withdrew from public life, and disappeared. The commission was furious, but they were also scared. Someone had bypassed their security, accessed their sealed files, identified a cover-up, and punished the guilty party. All without leaving a trace that could be followed. Nezu read the report in his office. He steepled his paws. He pulled up the USJ footage again, the single frame, the posture, the build. Fascinating, he said, to no one, to himself, to the growing certainty that the Shredder was not a seasoned criminal or a rogue hero or a foreign operative. The Shredder was a teenager. And that made him the most dangerous person in Japan. Mina Ashido trained with the Foot Clan for 6 months before she first fought alongside the Shredder. The training was brutal. Not the same kind of brutal as UA. UA was structured, graded, supervised by adults who would step in if things went too far. The Foot Clan's training was Darwinian. The AI ran combat simulations that adapted in real time to Mina's movements, getting faster, more aggressive, more creative the better she got. She fought drones that exploited her weaknesses. She ran obstacle courses in the dark. She practiced capoeira forms until her muscles screamed, and then she practiced them again in the Shredder's armor training room, where the floor was slick metal and the temperature dropped to near freezing without warning. Her capoeira was already beautiful. Under the Foot Clan's training, it became devastating. Capoeira is a martial art built on rhythm. It flows. The Jinga, the basic rocking step, is a pendulum, and every attack swings from that pendulum like a wrecking ball on a chain. Kicks come from angles that shouldn't exist. The body cartwheels and spins and drops and rises, and the fighter never stops moving because stillness is death. Mina added acid. Every kick, every spinning heel strike, every cartwheel, acid coated her limbs. Not enough to dissolve on contact, but enough to burn. Enough to scar, enough to make every hit permanent. She could adjust the concentration on the fly, a light coating for sparring, a full-strength bath for combat. At full power, a single kick from Mina Ashido could eat through body armor. A sustained assault could melt a car, but the real innovation was the ground game. She learned to secrete acid onto the floor as she danced. Every step left a slick of corrosive fluid that ate through boots, dissolved footing, turned solid ground into a trap. Opponents who tried to close the distance found themselves slipping on acid, their shoes dissolving, their balance gone. And a capoeira fighter against someone with no balance is a shark against a swimmer with no legs. The Shredder watched her progress. He didn't praise, he didn't encourage, he corrected. He pointed out openings. He told her when she was sloppy and when she was slow and when her acid output was inconsistent. And when she got something right, when she nailed a sequence that was faster and more fluid and more destructive than anything she'd done before, he would nod. Once, Mina lived for that nod, because the Shredder didn't waste words. If he acknowledged something, it was real. She also became the first person since Kurai to make him show a hint of humanity in casual moments. Mina was loud. Mina was funny. Mina told terrible jokes and laughed at her own punchlines and danced to music in the cavern's common area and dragged Kurai into dance sessions that filled the underground base with the kind of noise it had never heard. The Shredder would watch from the console, ostensibly reviewing intelligence reports, and his mouth, visible only when the helmet was off, would twitch. Just barely. The ghost of a smile on a face that had forgotten how. Kurai loved Mina. Instantly and completely. The pink girl was warm and bright and loud, everything the cavern wasn't, and she treated Kurai like a little sister. She braided her hair. She taught her to dance. She told her stories about the outside world that made it sound less terrifying. "Hey, boss," Mina said one evening, leaning against the console with a grin. "Does this make me like the cool ant?" The Shredder looked up from his screen. "It makes you a member of the Foot Clan who is currently 3 minutes late for her evening training session." Mina groaned. "See, you say that, but the answer was yes. The answer is always yes. Kurai, tell your dad I'm the cool ant." From somewhere in the back of the cavern, Kurai's small voice, "She's the cool ant." The Shredder's mouth twitched again. "Begin your training." Mina cartwheeled away, laughing, acid sizzling faintly on the metal floor. The Shredder was not idle during this period. The Yakuza purge, the destruction of the Shiha Saikai, was only the first move. It was the loudest, the most visible, designed to send a message. The moves that followed were quieter. They were targeted. The Shredder dismantled the criminal infrastructure of Japan piece by piece, not with grand assaults, but with strategic decapitations. He hit the supply lines first. Drug routes, weapons pipelines, money laundering operations that funneled cash through hero merchandise companies and real estate fronts. He didn't steal from them. He destroyed them. Warehouses burned. Shipping containers vanished. Bank accounts were drained by UTROM hacking systems that treated human cybersecurity like a child's puzzle. Then he hit the people. Mid-level operators, the ones who kept the machine running. They woke up to find their safe houses compromised, their soldiers beaten and bound, their operations exposed in anonymous data dumps to the police. Just enough evidence to trigger arrests, never enough to trace back to the Foot Clan. The criminal underworld started to collapse inward. The smaller organizations folded or ran. The mid-tier players tried to consolidate and found that their allies had already been turned, bribed, or broken. The top-tier groups, the ones that remained, sent representatives to the Shredder. They didn't negotiate. They surrendered. Because the alternative was what happened to Overhaul, and nobody wanted that. Within a year, the Foot Clan controlled 70% of the criminal infrastructure in Japan. Not through cooperation, through conquest. The Shredder didn't share power. He took it. He reorganized the criminal economy under his authority, eliminated the operations he found distasteful. Human trafficking died immediately and violently, and turned the rest into a resource engine for the Foot Clan's growing operations. He built a network, intelligence operatives in every major city, combat squads trained in the cavern and deployed to maintain order in territories the police couldn't reach. Technology stations that used UTROM systems to monitor hero agencies, government communications, and the movements of every significant power player in the country. The Foot Clan wasn't a gang, it wasn't a syndicate, it was a shadow government. And at its center, in the armor behind the faceplate, the boy who had crawled out of a cavern at age 12 sat on a throne he'd built with his own hands. The hero world felt the shift. They couldn't name it, couldn't point to a single cause, but the landscape was changing underneath them. Crime statistics were dropping, not because of hero work, but because someone was reorganizing crime so efficiently that the messy, visible stuff almost disappeared. The Commission's intelligence division noticed the pattern and couldn't explain it. Their informants were going dark. Their operations were being anticipated. Someone was playing the board 5 moves ahead. Meanwhile, the heroes themselves were starting to show cracks. The hero billboard chart, the ranking system that determined who was number 1, who got the funding, who got the endorsements, was supposed to be about strength and public approval. In practice, it was about politics. The Commission controlled the rankings the way a casino controls the odds. Heroes who played ball got promoted. Heroes who asked questions got buried. The number 1 hero was still All Might, but All Might was dying. Everyone close to the industry knew it. His power was fading. His time was running out. The man who had smiled for a generation was slowly being eaten alive by the wound he'd taken years ago, and the Commission was scrambling to find a replacement. Someone they could control, someone who would wear the leash and call it a cape. The Shredder didn't care about All Might. All Might was yesterday. The Shredder was planning for tomorrow, and tomorrow needed a #1 hero he could work with. There was exactly one candidate, Rumi Usagiyama. Hero name, Mirko, the rabbit hero. She was everything the Commission hated. Loud, aggressive, uncontrollable. She worked solo because she couldn't tolerate partners. She fought villains like she was born in a cage, and every fight was her chance to prove that the cage couldn't hold her. She didn't do press conferences. She didn't do endorsements. She didn't do the soft, smiling, reassuring performance that the Commission demanded of its top-ranked heroes. She did one thing. She fought. Harder, faster, and more viciously than anyone in the top 10. Her legs could shatter concrete. Her kicks generated shockwaves. She once destroyed a 4-story building by accident during a fight with a villain who wasn't worth the paperwork. And when the Commission reprimanded her, she told them exactly where they could put their paperwork. She was ranked 5th. She should have been 1st. The 4 heroes above her were better at politics. She was better at everything else. The Shredder respected exactly one hero. It was Mirko, because Mirko was the only one who was real. But to put her at #1, he had to clear the board, and clearing the board meant dealing with the heroes above her, one by one, starting at the top and working down. This is where the story gets dark. Darker than the Yakuza Purge. Darker than the USJ. Because destroying criminals is one thing. Even the heroes would quietly thank you for taking out Overhaul. Destroying heroes is something else entirely. It's an attack on the symbol, on the system, on the myth that says the people in capes are untouchable. The Shredder didn't care about the myth. He cared about the board. He started with Hawks, Keigo Takami, the #2 hero, the Commission's golden boy. Fast, charismatic, effortlessly powerful. His quirk, fierce wings, gave him a pair of massive crimson wings composed of thousands of individual feathers he could control independently. Each feather was a blade, a sensor, and a flight mechanism. He could blanket a city block with feathers and know everything happening in it. He could fly faster than most jets. He was, by any metric, one of the most dangerous people alive. He was also a spy. The Commission's spy, embedded in the villain underground, playing both sides with a smile and a pair of sunglasses. He reported to the Commission. The Commission pulled his strings. He was everything wrong with the hero system wrapped in red feathers and a charming grin. The Shredder hit him on a Tuesday night. Hawks was in flight. Routine patrol, high altitude, lazy circles over the city, feathers spread in a sensory net that covered 8 city blocks. He was relaxed. He was always relaxed. It was his thing. Cool, unbothered, one step ahead. The first shuriken came from below. Hawk's feathers detected it, a small metallic object rising fast, aimed at his left wing. He dodged. Easy. He sent 3 feathers down as a counterattack, tracking the origin point. The feathers hit nothing. The origin point was empty. The second shuriken came from a different angle. Then a third. Then a fourth. Hawks dodged them all, but his flight pattern was changing, reacting, adjusting, being guided by the attacks without realizing it. The Shredder had launched the shurikens not to hit him, but to herd him. Lower, slower, closer to the buildings. Hawks figured it out too late. The Shredder was on a rooftop directly below Hawk's adjusted flight path. Full armor, blades extended. He'd calculated Hawks' evasion patterns, mapped the feather sense network, found the blind spot directly below within the feather radius, but obscured by Hawk's own body, and positioned himself there. He jumped. The armor's leg systems fired, Utrom enhanced, capable of propelling the wearer 50 feet vertically from a standing start. The Shredder rocketed upward into Hawks' blind spot like a bladed missile. Hawk sensed him at the last possible second. Feathers snapped inward, forming a shield. 20, 30 feathers, layered and hardened into a barrier. The Shredder's gauntlet blades hit the feather barrier and cut through it. The sound was horrifying, a screech of metal on metal, the snap of quills being severed, and then the meaty, wet sound of blades reaching flesh. The Shredder's claws sank into the base of Hawk's left wing, where feather met muscle met bone. Hawks screamed. The Shredder grabbed the wing root with both hands, gauntlet blades buried in the muscle, and ripped. The wing came off. Muscle fibers snapped, tendons stretched and popped, blood sprayed in a wide arc across the night sky. The wing separated from Hawks' back with a sound like a tree being uprooted, and the Shredder fell backward with it in his hands. A mass of crimson feathers and torn flesh. Hawks dropped. He dropped like a stone. One wing. You can't fly with one wing. He tumbled, spiraling, the remaining wing beating frantically, but only succeeding in turning a straight fall into a corkscrew. His feathers, the autonomous ones, tried to catch him, forming a net below his body, layering themselves into a platform. It slowed the fall. It didn't stop it. He hit a rooftop, hard. The feather net absorbed some of the impact, but he still bounced, rolled, and slammed into an air conditioning unit hard enough to dent the metal. He lay there, gasping, blood pouring from the ragged wound where his left wing used to be, staring at the sky with wide, disbelieving eyes. The Shredder landed on the same rooftop. Light. Controlled. The wing, what was left of it, was at his feet. Hawks tried to move. His feathers rallied. 100 of them, light, forming blades, points, a last desperate offense. They shot toward the Shredder in a focused barrage. The Shredder's quirk fired. Every feather, every single one, stopped in midair. They shuddered, vibrated, and then shot backwards, scattering across the rooftop like leaves in a hurricane. The metal shafts in each feather had answered his pull, and 100 weapons became 100 pieces of litter. Hawks stared. The blood drained from his face. Not from the wound, from realization. He could feel his remaining feathers fighting the pull, straining against an invisible grip that wanted to rip them free too. You, Hawks managed. His voice was thin, shocked. Your quirk. You relied on your wings, the Shredder said. You built your identity on flight, on being above everyone, on watching from a height where nothing could touch you. He stepped closer. Hawks tried to crawl backward. His body wouldn't cooperate. Now you are grounded. Now you are what you always were underneath the feathers, a man who followed orders because he was too afraid to give his own. The Shredder looked at the city below, at the lights, at the world that still thought Hawks was untouchable. Tell your handlers at the commission that the sky belongs to me now. Any hero who flies above this city does so because I allow it. He turned and walked to the edge of the rooftop. He stepped off and was gone. Hawks lay on the rooftop for 11 minutes before his emergency beacon brought a rescue team. He survived. The wing did not. His remaining wing, damaged by the trauma of the other's removal, atrophied over the following weeks. He'd never fly again. His career as the number 2 hero ended on that rooftop in a pool of his own blood, staring at the sky he used to own. The news broke the next morning. Hawks retired permanently. The official story was injuries sustained during a villain encounter. The real story spread through the underground in hours. The Shredder ripped his wings off in the air with his bare hands. The hero world didn't just crack, it shuddered. The next one was faster. The number 3 hero, a powerhouse, all bulk and raw force. The kind of hero who'd been coasting on physical stats and good PR for a decade. The Shredder caught him in an alley 3 nights after Hawks. The man never even saw the attack coming. One moment he was walking to his car. The next, an armored hand grabbed him by the face, lifted him off the ground, and drove him spine first across an armored knee. The crack was audible. The man's back bent at an angle the human body was never designed to achieve. He dropped. He was alive. He was conscious. He would never walk again. The Shredder stood over him. You were number 3, he said. You held a rank you did not earn, protecting a system you did not question, serving masters who did not deserve your loyalty. This is the consequence. He left the man in the alley. The ambulance found him 20 minutes later. The parallel was obvious to anyone who'd ever picked up a comic book. Bane broke the bat. The Shredder broke the number 3. And the message was the same. Your symbols can bleed. Your pillars can fall. Your unbreakable heroes are very, very breakable. The hero community went into full panic. The commission held emergency meetings. Agency directors pulled their top heroes off patrol and into secure locations. The streets emptied at night. For the first time in the era of professional heroism, the heroes were afraid of the dark. 2 more fell within the month. The number 4 was ambushed during a public event. The Shredder materialized from a crowd, disabled his security detail in 4 seconds, and put the hero down with a single strike to the throat that collapsed his trachea. He survived, barely. He retired that week. The number 5 quit. Didn't wait to be attacked. Saw what happened to Hawks, saw what happened to the others, and submitted his resignation on live television. He didn't even try to save face. He just said, "I'm done," and walked off stage. The Billboard chart was gutted. Positions 1 through 5, vacant, hospitalized, retired, or running. The commissions scrambled. They promoted. They shuffled. They tried to fill the gaps with younger heroes, with sidekicks, with anyone who could hold a rank and a press conference. And into the void stepped Rumi Usagiyama. Mirko, number 1. She didn't celebrate. She showed up at the press conference, stood behind the podium, and stared at the cameras with an expression that dared them to congratulate her. "I didn't ask for this," she said, "and I don't want it. 4 heroes are in hospitals, 1 is in hiding, and you're throwing me a party? What's wrong with you people?" The commission representative standing behind her went pale. This was not the script. This was not the plan. "The hero system is broken," Mirko continued. Someone just proved it by going through the top 5 like they were sidekicks at a meet and greet. Instead of figuring out how that happened, you're giving me a trophy and hoping I'll smile for the cameras. I won't. She looked directly into the main camera. "I'll take the rank, but I'm not your mascot. I'm not your symbol. I'm a fighter. And right now, the thing that's terrorizing this country, I'm the only one left who's strong enough to face it." The press conference ended. The commission was livid. The public was divided. Half of them called Mirko a hero. The other half called her ungrateful. Mirko didn't care. She never cared. But somewhere in a cavern beneath the city, watching the press conference on a holographic screen, the Shredder leaned back in his chair. "Good," he said. Kurai was sitting next to him, drawing on a tablet the Shredder had built from Utrom parts. She looked up. "Is she the one you talked about?" "Yes." "Is she strong?" "The strongest." "Stronger than you?" A pause. The barest flicker of something across his face. "We will see." The commission didn't let Mirko's insubordination stand. They couldn't fire her. She was too popular, too powerful, and the public was already watching. But they could bury her. They started slow, reassigning her to low-priority missions, cutting her support budget, losing her equipment requests, the bureaucratic death of 1,000 paper cuts. When that didn't work, because Mirko handled low-priority missions by kicking through them in 5 minutes and spending the rest of her day publicly criticizing the commission. They escalated. She found a bug in her apartment. Then another. Her phone was being monitored. Her movements were being tracked. She started asking loud, public questions about commission corruption, about the cover-ups, about the deals with donors, about the way certain crimes vanished from the books when the perpetrators had the right connections. She was asking the same questions Mina Ishido had asked. The difference was that Mina was a student. Mirko was the number 1 hero. She had a platform, she had a voice, and she had legs that could kick through reinforced concrete. The commission decided she was a bigger threat than the Shredder. That was a mistake. The assault on the Hero Public Safety Commission headquarters happened on a night in late autumn. The leaves had turned, the air was cold, the city was quiet in the way that cities get quiet before something terrible happens, like the earth holds its breath. The Foot Clan hit the building from 4 directions simultaneously. East, a squad of 12 armored in lightweight Foot Clan gear, carrying EMP devices that killed the building's electronic defenses in the first 30 seconds. They breached the East Wing through a maintenance entrance that had been compromised 3 weeks earlier by a foot operative disguised as a janitor. West, Mina Ishido, solo. She came through the parking garage like a pink hurricane, acid eating through the security gate before anyone could hit the alarm. 3 guards in the garage. The first one ate a spinning back kick that left acid burns across his chest armor and sent him into the wall. The second got a ginga into Mea Lua de Compasso that took his legs out and slicked the floor with corrosive fluid. The third tried to draw weapon. Mina cartwheeled into him, both feet hitting his chest, acid eating through his body armor before he hit the ground. She danced through the West Wing hallway, every step a rhythm, every movement leaving acid trails on the floor and walls. The guards who tried to follow slipped, burned, fell. She was laughing. It wasn't cruel laughter. It was the sound of someone who had been powerless for too long and was finally free. North. A distraction team. Smoke, noise, explosions designed to look bigger than they were. The Commission's response teams converged on the north entrance, thinking it was the main assault. South. The Shredder. Alone. He walked through the south entrance like he owned the building. The reinforced glass doors didn't slow him. He hit them with the flat of his gauntlet, and they exploded inward, showering the lobby with fragments. The security desk was manned by 2 armed guards with combat quirks. They saw the armor, the blades, the red eyes. One of them reached for the panic button. The Shredder pulled. The button, a small metal device, ripped free from the desk and flew into his hand. He crushed it. "I am not here for you," he said. "Leave." They left. Smart. He climbed. Stairwell, not elevator. Elevators were traps, and the Shredder didn't walk into traps. He climbed 12 floors in armor that weighed 100 pounds, and he wasn't breathing hard when he reached the top. The Commission's emergency response team was waiting. 8 of them, spread across the 12th floor, armed with quirk suppression gear and military-grade weapons. They had barricades. They had a plan. The Shredder came through the stairwell door, and their plan evaporated. He pulled. Every piece of metal in the hallway answered. Guns flew from hands. Armor buckles popped. The barricades, metal-framed, slid across the floor toward him, dragging the people behind them. The response team was exposed, disarmed, and off balance in the span of a heartbeat. He moved through them. Fast. Each strike was 1 hit, 1 takedown. Gauntlet to the jaw, elbow to the sternum, a throw that sent 1 guard into another, a kick that folded the last one over his own barricade. 8 people. 8 seconds. He reached the Commission President's office. The door was locked. He cut through it. Inside. Empty. The President had already evacuated. The Shredder expected that. He wasn't here for the President. He was here for the files. He plugged a UTROM data device into the main terminal. The AI began downloading everything. Every classified file, every cover-up, every deal, every buried investigation, every name of every person who had ever used the Commission's power for personal gain. The download took 90 seconds. 90 seconds was a long time to hold a building. Mirko arrived at second 87. She came through the wall. Not a door, not a window. The wall. Her kick hit the exterior of the 12th floor with enough force to blow a hole 6 feet wide in the reinforced concrete. Debris, dust, moonlight, and Mirko, landing in a crouch in the middle of the office, ears pinned back, legs coiled, eyes locked on the Shredder. "I knew it was you," she said. The Shredder pulled the data device from the terminal and pocketed it. He turned to face her. The moonlight streaming through the hole in the wall lit them both, her white hair wild, his armor gleaming. "Mirko," he said, "I expected you sooner." "Traffic," she straightened. Her legs, bare, scarred, the most dangerous weapons in Japan, flexed. "You've been busy." "I have." "Hawks, the others, the underground, all of it was you." "Yes. And now this. Hitting the Commission. Taking their files." Her eyes narrowed. "You're either starting a war or finishing one." I finished the war months ago. This is the peace." She laughed. Short, sharp. "Mirko. Peace. You call this peace? I call it the beginning of a world where the strong are not leashed by the weak, where fighters fight and bureaucrats burn. And you decide who's strong. Someone has to." They stood across from each other, 5 feet apart, an ocean between them. And for a moment neither moved, because they both knew what was about to happen, and some part of them, the part that recognized the same fire in the other's eyes, wanted to hold the moment before it broke. Mirko moved first, because of course she did. Mirko always moved first. She launched. A flying kick, her signature, the one that broke walls and cracked mountains, powered by legs that generated more force per square inch than any natural limb had a right to. The air itself compressed in front of her foot as it streaked toward the Shredder's chest. He crossed his forearm blades and caught the kick. The impact was titanic. The floor cracked beneath his feet. The walls groaned. The windows on the floor below blew out from the shockwave. His boots slid backwards 6 inches, the first time he'd been moved by anyone since he put on the armor. He grinned behind the faceplate. He shoved her foot aside and struck. A blade-laced backhand aimed at her temple. She ducked it by a hair, literally. White strands floated in the air where the blade passed. She dropped low, spun, and swept at his legs with a whip-crack kick that would have shattered a normal person's shins. His boots absorbed the impact. He didn't budge. He reached down and grabbed her ankle. She twisted, using his grip as a pivot, spinning her body in the air, bringing her other leg around in a devastating axe kick aimed at the top of his head. He released her ankle and stepped back. The kick hit the floor. The floor didn't survive, a crater 3 feet wide. In reinforced concrete, they separated. Reset. Circled. "You're fast," she said. "You're stronger than I calculated." "Good. I'd hate to be boring." She came again. A barrage. Left kick, right kick, spinning heel, front thrust, drop axe, rising knee. Every strike was a potential kill shot. Every one landed with the force of a small explosion. The Shredder blocked, parried, dodged. His blades sparked against her armored boots. His armor dented her kick he didn't fully deflect. She was pushing him. Actually pushing him. Nobody had pushed him since the combat drones in the cavern, he answered. A feint. High, with the blades making her react upward. Then a body shot, a straight palm strike to her solar plexus that sent her sliding backward across the broken floor. She grunted. That was it. Just a grunt. She didn't double over. She didn't gasp. She absorbed the hit like it was weather and came right back, knee to his midsection. He twisted, took it on his hip plate, grabbed her thigh. She headbutted him. The crack of her forehead against his faceplate rang through the building. His vision blurred for half a second. She used that half second to rip free and deliver an uppercut kick to his chin that snapped his head back and sent his helmet flying off. It clattered to the floor. For the first time, Mirko saw his face. Young. Green eyes, green hair, sweat matted and wild. Scars across his jaw and temple from years of training. He looked like a kid. He fought like a god. She froze, just for a moment. "You're a kid," she breathed. "I am the Shredder." He hit her while she was processing, a spinning elbow to the jaw that would have dropped anyone else. She staggered, recovered, kicked him in the ribs so hard the armor plate cracked, back and forth. Across the ruined office, through walls, over desks, through the hole she'd made in the exterior wall, and onto the rooftop. The fight spilled outside, and the night sky lit up with each impact. People on the streets below looked up and saw flashes, sparks from blades, the white blur of her kicks, shadows moving against the moonlight. They fought for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of absolute, relentless, full-power combat between two people who had never met their match and were experiencing the thrill and the terror of it for the first time. It ended on the rooftop. Mirko threw her best kick, the Luna arc, the one that had shattered a villain's quirk-enhanced armor from the outside in. She put everything into it, every ounce of power her body could generate. The air compressed and cracked. The rooftop beneath her planted foot splintered. The Shredder didn't dodge, he stepped into it. He caught her leg, not with his hands, but with his body, absorbing the impact against his chest plate, letting the force slam him backward but not down. His arms wrapped around her leg. He held her. She was caught. For a heartbeat, they were locked together, her leg against his chest, his arms around her, her eyes wide, his steady. He drove forward, used her own momentum against her, turning the catch into a takedown, sweeping her other leg, bringing her to the ground. She hit the rooftop on her back. He pinned her, gauntlet blade against her throat, knee on her stomach, his weight and the armor's weight pressing down. She could have fought out. Maybe. Her legs could still generate force from this position. She could have kicked upward into his back, tried to throw him. She didn't. She looked up at him, at his face, young, scarred, sweat-streaked, absolutely alive. His green eyes burned in the moonlight. The gauntlet blade was cold against her throat, but his hand, the one holding the blade, was trembling. Just barely. Not from exhaustion. She laughed. Full. Real from the chest. The kind of laugh that belonged to someone who had just found something she'd been looking for without knowing she was looking. "You're insane," she said. "Possibly. You're a kid. I was a kid. What I am now is something else." "Yeah." She looked at the blade, at him. "Yeah, you are." He pulled the blade back. He stood. He extended his hand. She looked at it. The gauntlet. The blades, retracted now. The hand of the person who had gutted the hero system, destroyed the criminal underworld, and just fought her to a standstill. She took it. He pulled her up. They stood on the rooftop, the city spread below them, fire and sirens in the distance, the commission building smoking. "What now?" she asked. "Now the real work begins. The commission is compromised. The hero system is rotten. The villain underground is mine. What remains is building something that replaces all of it. And you want me. I want the only person who has earned the right to stand beside me." A beat. Mirko studied him. Her rabbit ears twitched. Not a nervous tell, a thinking one. She was reading him, testing the words against everything she knew. "I don't follow," she said. "I've never followed anyone. I am not asking you to follow. I am asking you to rule." Another beat. Longer. "You're really serious," she said. "I have never been anything else." She crossed her arms, looked at the city, looked at him. "Fine. But if you ever lie to me, I'll kick you so hard your ancestors feel it." Noted. And that was it. That was the moment. Two people who had been alone their entire lives, fighting the world with nothing but their own strength, standing on a rooftop and deciding that being alone was overrated. It wasn't soft. It wasn't romantic in the way movies sell romance. It was earned. Hard fought. Forged in 7 minutes of combat and years of mutual respect. The Shredder had watched Mirko fight for years and seen the only hero worth saving. Mirko had fought the Shredder and found the only person alive who could match her. They walked off the rooftop together. The fallout was immediate and enormous. The Commission's files hit the internet 12 hours later. The Shredder didn't leak them all. He was strategic. He released the worst of it. The cover-ups, the corruption, deals that sacrificed civilians for political convenience. The public saw it. The media ran with it. The Commission tried to deny, to deflect, to control the narrative. They failed. The evidence was overwhelming. Within a week, the Commission's president resigned. Within a month, 14 senior officials were under investigation. The hero system didn't collapse. It staggered, wounded, exposed. The public's faith, already cracked by the string of hero retirements, shattered when they saw the scope of the rot. Mirko stood at the center of the storm and did what she did best. She told the truth. In press conferences, in interviews, in loud public statements that made the remaining Commission loyalists grind their teeth. She called for reform. She called for transparency. She called for a hero system that served the people instead of itself. Behind her, invisible, the Foot Clan operated. The Shredder's network ensured that the reform pushed in the right direction, his direction. New oversight bodies were staffed with people he'd vetted. New protocols were written by experts he'd chosen. The hero system was being rebuilt, and the blueprints had blades hidden in them. Nobody knew. Nobody except Mirko, who understood exactly what the Shredder was doing and chose to be part of it anyway. Because she'd seen the old system from the inside and she knew it couldn't be fixed by playing nice. It had to be broken first. And the Shredder was very, very good at breaking things. And then Katsuki Bakugo showed up. Because of course, he did. Because Bakugo was many things, brilliant, explosive, powerful, relentless, but above all, he was obsessive. And the moment the first rumors about the Shredder's identity started circulating, the age, the build, the green eyes Mirko had described in a private debrief that somehow leaked, Bakugo's world narrowed to a single burning point. He'd known Izuku Midoriya his entire life. He'd watched the kid disappear at age 10 and assumed he'd run away or died or just stopped mattering, which in Bakugo's mind were all roughly the same thing. But the Shredder, the height, the hair color, and the blurry footage, the age, the timeline, it clicked. It all clicked, and Bakugo lost his mind. Not in the usual way. Not the screaming, exploding, tantrum-throwing Bakugo that everyone at UA had learned to work around. This was different. This was focused. This was Bakugo at his most dangerous. Quiet, planning, obsessively training, spending every waking hour preparing for a fight he had decided was inevitable. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't ask for help. Bakugo didn't ask for help. Bakugo was going to find the Shredder, find Izuku. And he was going to end this. Because Bakugo couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that the quirkless kid he'd chased through a park 10 years ago had become the most feared person in Japan. Couldn't accept that Izuku Midoriya, weak, worthless, pathetic Izuku Midoriya, had surpassed him so completely that the comparison was laughable. The Shredder had dismantled the criminal underworld, destroyed the top heroes, brought the Commission to its knees, and built an empire. Bakugo had won a sports festival. The rage was existential. If Izuku could become this monster, this conqueror, this force of nature, then what did that say about Bakugo, about his quirk, about his entire identity, about the years he'd spent telling himself he was the best, the strongest, the one who would stand at the top? It said he was wrong. And Bakugo would rather die than be wrong. He found the Shredder on the night of the Commission assault, tracked him through the city using explosion-boosted mobility and a GPS tracker he'd planted on a Foot Clan operative 3 weeks earlier. He blew through the Foot Clan's outer perimeter like they were training dummies. Explosions, screaming, concrete turning to rubble. Foot soldiers went flying, trained, armored soldiers, and Bakugo didn't even slow down. He was 18 years old. He was at the peak of his power. His quirk, explosion, fueled by nitroglycerin sweat, had been refined to a weapon of mass destruction. His grenade bracers, the ones he'd worn since his first year at UA, were upgraded, heavier, capable of storing and channeling even bigger blasts. He was, by any reasonable measure, one of the most powerful young heroes in the country. It wasn't going to be enough. He found the Shredder in the plaza outside the Commission building. The fires were still burning. The smoke was thick. Mirko had already left. Mina was handling cleanup on the west side. The Shredder was alone, standing in the orange light of the flames, helmet back on, surveying the damage. Bakugo landed hard. The impact cracked the pavement. He stood up, palms sparking, sweat glistening, teeth bared. "I'm gonna kill you, Midoriya!" The Shredder turned, slowly. The red eyes behind the faceplate locked on Bakugo with an expression that was impossible to read and didn't need to be. "Izuku Midoriya is dead," the Shredder said. "There is only the Shredder." "Bullshit! I know it's you! I know it's you!" Bakugo's hands exploded, not an attack, just rage expressed through nitroglycerin. The air heated, the pavement blackened. "You disappeared. You ran. You hid underground like a coward, Tak. And now you come out wearing a costume and acting like you're somebody? You're nobody. You were always nobody." The Shredder looked at him. "Are you finished?" "I'm going to finish you." Bakugo launched, explosion-propelled, zero to terminal velocity in a heartbeat. His right hand cocked back, palm forward, the nitroglycerin igniting in a focused blast aimed at the Shredder's chest. The Shredder sidestepped. The explosion hit the ground behind him and blew a crater in the pavement. Bakugo landed, spun, launched again, a sequence of explosive bursts, each one faster, harder, more desperate than the last. The Shredder moved through them. He didn't dodge wildly. He shifted. Inches. Just enough. The explosions missed by margins so small that the heat singed the edges of his armor. He read Bakugo like a book. Every tell, every habit, every pattern from 10 years of watching the boy fight on television and in person. Bakugo's left hook explosion. The Shredder leaned right. The blast scorched the air beside his head. Bakugo's AP shot, a focused, concentrated blast from a single finger. The Shredder tilted his helmet. The beam passed through the space his head had occupied a fraction of a second earlier and blew out the front of a building behind him. Bakugo's stun grenade. A widespread, low-power blast designed to blind and disorient. The Shredder's helmet filtered the light. He didn't even blink. Bakugo was throwing everything. His best moves, his signature attacks, the techniques he'd spent years perfecting. The ones that had won tournaments and beaten villains and earned him a hero license. The Shredder avoided every single one. And then he attacked. One step forward. Inside Bakugo's guard. A knee to the stomach that lifted Bakugo off his feet. Bakugo gasped, the air driven from his lungs in one violent instant. Before he could fall, the Shredder grabbed him by the front of his costume and headbutted him. The Shredder's helmet versus Bakugo's forehead. The crack was sickening. Bakugo's vision went white. The Shredder threw him, 20 feet across the plaza. Bakugo hit the ground, rolled, came up on one knee. Blood poured from a gash on his forehead. His vision was doubled. His ears were ringing. Get up, the Shredder said. Bakugo got up, because Bakugo always got up. He charged again. Explosions from both palms, a double blast that he angled downward, launching himself into the air. At the apex, he spun, the same move that powered his howitzer impact. The rotation building centrifugal force, the nitroglycerin gathering in his palms, more and more and more, a spiral of flame and fury. Howitzer. The Shredder watched him spin. He watched the explosion build. He watched the biggest, most powerful attack in Bakugo's arsenal wind up like a bomb about to drop, and then his quirk fired. Bakugo felt it immediately. His grenade bracers, the metal ones, bolted to his forearms, containing the stored nitroglycerin, lurched, pulled. The bolts holding them in place strained, then snapped. The bracers ripped free from his arms and flew, not randomly, not wildly, but with terrifying precision. Directly onto the Shredder's extended gauntlet blades, the bracers slammed onto the blades like magnets hitting a fridge. They locked into place. The stored nitroglycerin inside them, the equivalent of several industrial-grade explosive charges, was now attached to the Shredder's weapons. Bakugo's eyes went wide. His spin faltered. His howitzer impact died mid-wind-up. Impact. The Shredder raised his arm. The bracers were glowing. The nitroglycerin was at critical mass. This heat shimmered from the metal. Bakugo hung in the air. Gravity hadn't claimed him yet. He had maybe half a second. No. The Shredder pointed the gauntlet-mounted bracers at Bakugo and clenched his fist. The nitroglycerin detonated. The explosion was unlike anything anyone in that city had ever seen. A column of fire erupted from the Shredder's arm and engulfed Bakugo completely. His own nitroglycerin, his own weapon, his own power turned back on him at point-blank range. The column rose 200 feet into the sky. The shockwave flattened everything within 100 meters. Streetlights, cars, building facades. Windows shattered in a 3-block radius. The heat flash was visible from across the city. People on the far side of town saw the sky turn orange and thought a gas line had exploded. The sound was loud. A deep, rolling thunder that shook the earth and rattled the bones of everyone who heard it. And then silence. The fire column faded. The smoke cleared. The plaza was a blackened ruin. Pavement melted, buildings scorched, the commission headquarters missing several more walls than it had started the evening with. The Shredder stood in the center of the blast zone. His armor was scorched. The bracers had melted off his gauntlet blades, dripping molten metal onto the ground. His cape, he'd added a cape because the Shredder had a sense of drama, was gone, burned to ash. But he was standing. His red eyes glowed through this breathing. He was fine. Bakugo was not fine. He was on the ground. 50 feet from where he'd been floating, his costume was burned away. His skin was blistered and blackened across his arms and chest. His grenade bracers were gone. Of course they were gone. They'd been the bomb. He was alive. Barely. His eyes were open, staring at the sky, unfocused. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. The Shredder walked toward him. Each step crunched on melted pavement. He stood over Bakugo and looked down, the same way Bakugo had looked down at him 100 times. In the park, in the schoolyard, in the classroom. Always looking down, always above, always certain that the distance between them was permanent and deserved. "You spent your whole life telling me I was nothing," the Shredder said. "You told me I was weak. You told me I could never be a hero. You burned me, you beat me, you laughed at me, and you called it natural order." He knelt. His faceplate was inches from Bakugo's face. "This is natural order, Katsuki. The strong rule, the weak serve. And you, for all your fire and fury and screaming, were always the one who was afraid." Bakugo's eyes focused, just barely, just enough to see the faceplate, to see the red eyes, to see the boy he'd spent his whole life breaking, whole and armored and victorious. His mouth moved. A whisper, barely audible. "Fuck you." The Shredder looked at him for a long moment, then he stood. "Goodbye, Katsuki." He turned and walked away, into the smoke, into the shadows, into the empire he'd built. Bakugo lay on the melted pavement, staring at the sky while the sirens grew closer. The aftermath was a kind of earthquake, not the event itself, the ripple effects. Bakugo survived. He was hospitalized for 3 months. The burns were extensive. His arms, the ones that housed the nitroglycerin glands, were damaged in ways that recovery could not fully undo. He would never produce explosions at the same level again. The boy who defined himself by his explosive power would spend the rest of his life as a fraction of what he had been. The hero world reacted the way the hero world always reacted, with press conferences and promises and panels and very serious people saying very serious things about finding the Shredder and bringing him to justice. None of it mattered. The Shredder was a ghost. The Foot Clan was everywhere and nowhere. The evidence was always clean. The trails always went cold. Eraserhead tried. He pulled every thread he could find. He analyzed the USJ footage, the Hawks incident, the Commission assault. He mapped movements, tracked patterns, built a profile. He got close, closer than anyone else. But Nezu got there first. The principal of UA sat in his office one evening with a file in his paws. The file contained a photograph of Izuku Midoriya, age 10, taken from a school yearbook. It contained a missing persons report filed by Inko Midoriya 14 months before her death. It contained a DNA analysis from the blood found at the USJ, blood from the Shredder's gauntlet scraped from a wall, type matched against the national database it matched. Nezu closed the file. He set it on his desk. He turned to the window and looked out at the campus, the training grounds, the dormitories, the students walking between classes, the hero system's next generation being shaped and sorted. Izuku Midoriya, he said softly. The Quirkless boy, missing since age 10, mother deceased, father, he paused. Unknown. He picked up the file again, opened it to the last page. A handwritten note from his own investigator, recommend immediate disclosure to hero agencies and law enforcement. Nezu looked at the note for a long time, then he shredded it. Not because he was protecting the Shredder, but because Nezu understood something that the Commission, the heroes, and the public did not. The Shredder had already won. Not the battles, the war. The criminal underworld was his. The hero system was broken and being rebuilt under his invisible hand. The Commission was gutted. The top heroes were gone, and the one hero left standing, the number one, the strongest, the one the public looked to, was his. Nezu was the smartest being in Japan, and the smartest being in Japan knew when to stop fighting a war that was already over. He filed Izuku Midoriya's records under sealed, principal's eyes only. He poured himself tea, and he waited. Class 1A figured it out eventually. Or some of them did. Todoroki, who was quiet and observant and had a talent for seeing through masks. Yaoyorozu, who ran the numbers on the Shredder's known capabilities and cross-referenced them against every registered and unregistered quirk in the national database until she found one match. Telekinesis. Limited range, small objects. Kirishima, who didn't figure it out through analysis but through gut instinct. He remembered the way the Shredder had moved at the USJ, the posture, something about it that nagged at him for months until one day he looked at an old news photo of Izuku Midoriya and went very, very quiet. They talked about it, in whispers, in private. Never in writing, never where a camera or a microphone could catch it. There was no proof. There was never proof. The Shredder's operational security was absolute. The Utrom technology erased tracks, scrambled recordings, and fed false data to every surveillance system in the country. The Foot Clan's intelligence network was better than the government's, better than the Commission's, better than anything the hero world had ever seen. And even if there had been proof, what would they do with it? Who would they tell? The Commission was a smoking ruin. The top heroes were retired, hospitalized, or hiding. The police answered to a chain of command that the Foot Clan had infiltrated 3 layers deep. The Shredder ruled the shadows. And the shadows were expanding. Kurai was 7 when she first called him Dad. It happened casually. They were in the cavern. Mina was teaching Kurai a dance move, a simple Ginga step, slowed way down, Kurai's small feet moving in the rocking rhythm while Mina held her hands. The Shredder was at the console, reviewing intelligence from a Foot Clan cell in Osaka. Kurai stumbled, caught herself, looked up at Mina with a grin. Then she turned to the console and called, Dad! Dad, did you see? I did it! The cavern went quiet. Mina's hands tightened on Kurai's. The AI's ambient hum seemed to dip for a moment. The Shredder's hands stopped moving on the console. His back was to them, but they could see the stillness, the complete, total freeze of a man who had been hit by something no amount of armor could stop. He turned. Slowly. And behind the faceplate, behind the red eyes, behind the cold voice and the bladed gauntlets and the legacy of a dead alien conqueror, something human looked back. I saw, he said. His voice was even, controlled, exactly the same as always, but Mina saw his hands. They were shaking. She didn't say anything. She just picked Kurai up, swung her around, and announced that they were celebrating the dance achievement with ice cream that was definitely somewhere in this cavern if anyone cared to find it. The Shredder turned back to the console. He stared at the screen for a long time without reading any of the words on it. That night, after Kurai was asleep, he went to the armor maintenance bay. He sat in front of the hologram projector and created Krell's recording. The hologram appeared, bladed, cold, alien. You are the Shredder now, it said. The same words, the same tone, the same dead certainty. Izuku, and he was Izuku in that moment, in the dark, alone, looked at the hologram. "She called me Dad," he said. The hologram didn't respond. It was a recording. It couldn't hear him. "I don't know how to be that," he said. "I don't know how to be anything except this." He gestured at the armor, at the weapons, at the cavern. "But she called me Dad, and I..." He stopped, his jaw tightened, his eyes closed. When they opened, they were dry, clear, final. "I will be worthy of it," he said. To the recording, to the armor, to himself. The hologram flickered and looped. The same words, the same beginning. Izuku shut it off. The world above continued to spin. Heroes patrolled, villains plotted, citizens went about their lives. But underneath it all, in the currents, in the power structures, in the flow of money and information and force, the Shredder's hand moved. He didn't want to destroy the hero world. That was what people didn't understand. Destruction was easy. Any fool with enough power could burn things down, building something new, something that worked, something that lasted, something that didn't rot from the inside the way the old system had. That was the real challenge. The Foot Clan funded community defense programs in neighborhoods the heroes had neglected. They provided intelligence to law enforcement agencies that were too under-resourced to generate their own. They dismantled villain operations that the hero system was too slow or too political to address. They were, in every way that mattered, more effective than the heroes, and they were invisible. That was the key. The Shredder didn't want credit. He didn't want fame. He didn't want a billboard ranking or a hero name or a fan club. He wanted control. Quiet, total, invisible control. The kind of control that doesn't need to announce itself because it is woven so deeply into the fabric of things that removing it would cause the whole structure to collapse. Mirko was his public face, the number one hero, the symbol, the fighter. She handled the light, he handled the dark. Between them, they held the world in a grip that was gentle enough to look like freedom and strong enough to crush anything that threatened what they'd built. Mina ran the Foot Clan's operations. She'd grown from a traumatized student into a commanding presence, sharp, fearless, and absolutely loyal. She trained new recruits. She led field operations. She danced through battles with acid on her heels and a grin on her face. The criminal underworld called her the Pink Death. She thought it was hilarious. Kurai grew up in the cavern, surrounded by technology and warriors and the quiet, fierce love of a father who would annihilate nations for her. She was smart, smarter than anyone expected, with a mind that devoured information the way her father devoured opponents. The AI taught her languages, Mina taught her dance, Mirko taught her how to throw a punch, and the Shredder taught her the one lesson that mattered. You do not wait for the world to give you power. You take it, and then you use it to protect the people who cannot take it for themselves. She still called him Dad. Every day, and every day, behind the armor, something that used to be a frightened boy with scraped palms and torn sneakers smiled. Somewhere in a hidden facility connected to life support systems and surrounded by darkness, a man named Hisashi Midoriya, though that was not his real name, had never been his real name, sat in a chair and stared at a screen. The screen showed footage of the Commission assault. The Shredder in full armor walking through fire, the man's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. So, All for One whispered, "My son found his own way." He leaned back, the machines hummed, the darkness pressed in. Interesting. The machines hummed, the darkness held, and All for One, the man who had called himself Hisashi Midoriya when it suited him, the man who had worn 100 names across 100 lifetimes, the man who had planted seeds in the bodies of women he would never love, and waited for the harvest, sat in his chair and watched the footage loop. He watched it 6 more times. The way the Shredder moved through the Commission's south entrance, the way the glass exploded inward, the way the armored figure walked, not ran, walked, through a building full of armed security like it was an afternoon errand. The efficiency, the violence, the absolute absence of hesitation. All for One had made many weapons in his long life. He had shaped Tamura Shigaraki from a traumatized child into a vessel of rage. He had engineered Nomu from stolen flesh and stolen quirks. He had turned heroes into puppets, and puppets into corpses, and corpses into lessons. But this weapon, this one, he had not made. He had planted the seed. He had arranged the conditions. He had ensured that Hisashi Midoriya's genetic material reached Inko Midoriya's bloodline, that the resulting child would carry the latent telekinetic potential buried 3 generations deep in the mother's quirk factor. He had monitored the boy from a distance, through intermediaries, through data, through the patient observation of a man who measured time in decades, and then the boy had disappeared into the earth. All for One had known about Krell's vault. He had known about it for 40 years, since an Utrom energy signature had pinged on equipment he'd stolen from a government black site in the 1980s. He'd investigated. He'd found the entrance. He'd studied the holographic seal and recognized technology that was centuries beyond anything on the planet. He could have claimed it. He could have cracked it open and taken everything inside. He chose not to. Because the vault was keyed to DNA, and the DNA it wanted was specific, a particular combination of telekinetic potential and biological markers that matched a profile Krell had encoded into the system before his final defeat. All for One couldn't crack that lock without destroying what was inside, but he could breed a key. It had taken a generation. The pairing with Inko, the child, the wait. And then the boy had run from Bakugo and fallen through a hologram and put his hand on a needle, and everything All for One had planned clicked into place like the tumblers of a lock he'd been picking for 20 years. He'd let the boy train, let the boy grow, let the boy become. He'd let Inko die. That part had been easy. Inko Midoriya was a complication, a tether, a weakness, a point of emotional leverage that could have been used by anyone to control the weapon. All for One was building. A living mother meant a living vulnerability. A dead mother meant rage, grief, the severing of the last soft thing in the boy's life. All for One hadn't killed her. He hadn't needed to. He'd simply ensured that no one answered her calls, that the police investigation stalled, that the hero agencies she begged for help treated her like a nuisance. He'd leaned on the system, just a little, just enough, and the system had done the rest. Inko Midoriya had died because the world was indifferent, and All for One had made sure the world stayed that way. The boy had emerged from the cavern as the Shredder. All for One had watched, had waited, had cataloged and measured and assessed. And now, sitting in his chair in the dark, watching footage of his genetic investment walking through fire, he made his decision. The weapon was ready. It was time to collect. He pressed a button on the arm of his chair. A screen flickered. A face appeared. Nondescript, forgettable, the kind of face that belonged to someone you'd pass on the street and never remember. "Sir, I have a delivery for you," All for One said. "An envelope. You will take it to the Foot Clan's Sector 7 contact point in Musutafu. You will carry nothing else. You will say nothing. You will hand the envelope to whoever receives you, and you will leave." "Yes, sir." "The envelope is addressed to a specific name. You will not open it, you will not read it, you will not discuss its contents with anyone. If you are questioned, you will say only that you were paid by a stranger to make the delivery. You have no further information." "Understood, sir." All for One reached into a drawer beside his chair. The envelope was already prepared, cream-colored, thick paper, the kind of stationery that cost more than most people's rent. On the front, in handwriting that was elegant and deliberate, the penmanship of a man who had learned calligraphy in 3 different centuries, a name, not the Shredder, not the leader of the Foot Clan. Izuku Midoriya, inside the envelope, a photograph. Inko Midoriya, age 26, standing in a park, holding an ice cream cone and laughing at something outside the frame. Her hair was down. Her eyes were bright. She looked happy. She looked alive. Behind the photograph, a single line of text, handwritten in the same elegant script. "We should talk, son." The messenger took the envelope and disappeared into the night. The delivery reached the Foot Clan's Sector 7 contact point at 3:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. The contact, a former black market courier who had pledged to the Foot Clan 6 months earlier, followed protocol. He scanned the envelope for explosives, biological agents, and tracking devices. Clean. He logged it. He routed it up the chain. It reached Mina Ashido's desk by 6 a.m. Mina was already awake. She trained at 5 every morning, an hour of capoeira forms in the mobile base's exercise bay, acid sizzling on the reinforced floor, her body moving through the ginga and the ao and the macaco. with the kind of fluid power that made it impossible to tell where the dance ended and the killing began. She showered. She sat down at her desk. She picked up the envelope. She read the name on the front. Her face went still. She carried the envelope to the shredder's quarters. She knocked. The door opened. He was already dressed. Black fatigues, no armor, the gauntlet blades within arm's reach on the maintenance rack. His green eyes tracked the envelope in her hand. He saw the name. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "Sector 7 contact. Hand delivery. Single messenger. Mid-level villain. No known affiliation. Clean scan." He took the envelope. He opened it. He looked at the photograph. Izuku Midoriya, 26. Park. Ice cream. Laughing, he read the line on the back. "We should talk, son." Mina watched his face, and she had known the Shredder for years now. She had seen him destroy criminal empires without blinking. She had seen him take hits that would have killed anyone else and keep fighting. She had seen him hold Kurai through nightmares and fix broken models and sit in the dark for hours reviewing intelligence with the patience of a stone. Patience of a stone. She had never seen his jaw tighten the way it tightened now. The muscles beneath the skin locked. His eyes, green, scarred at the corners from years of training, went flat. The light in them didn't go out. It compressed, became something denser, heavier. He folded the photograph. He folded the note. He handed both to Mina. "Find out everything about the messenger, where he came from, who paid him, what routes he used to get to the contact point. Every step, every connection. Burn the trail back to its source. And when I find the source, report to me. Do not engage." Mina took the materials. She looked at him. She wanted to say something. She could feel the words forming, something about the photograph, about the handwriting, about the fact that someone out there knew his real name and was using it like a knife. But the Shredder's face was closed, sealed. The conversation was over. She left. The Shredder stood in his quarters for exactly 4 seconds. Then he walked to the training bay, selected 3 practice dummies from the rack, activated their combat protocols, and destroyed them. The first one lasted 8 seconds. He drove his fist through its chest plate and ripped out the motor assembly. The second one lasted 6. He caught its arm mid-swing, twisted until the joint broke, and slammed it into the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the reinforced steel. The third one lasted 3. He put his gauntlet blade through its head before it finished powering up. Pieces of drone scattered across the floor. The training bay smelled like burned wiring and hot metal. The Shredder stood in the debris. His breathing was even. His hands were steady. Everything that had moved through him when he'd seen the photograph, the surge, the heat, the thing that lived in the place where a 10-year-old boy used to cry, was back behind the wall. Contained. Controlled. He did not have a father. He had closed that door at age 12 in an empty apartment that smelled like dust and death, standing over a case file that summarized his mother's life and suicide in government language. The man who signed that letter was a stranger, a ghost, a name on a birth certificate that meant nothing. The man who signed that letter was a threat. And the Shredder handled threats. Mina's investigation took 11 days. She was thorough. The Shredder had taught her to be thorough, and Mina Ashido did nothing halfway. She traced the messenger through 4 intermediary contacts, 2 dead drops, and a payment chain that wound through 6 shell companies before terminating in a trust fund that had been established in 1947. Mina stared at the number. She ran it again. Same result. The financial entity that had funded the messenger's payment had been active for nearly 80 years. The signatures on the founding documents were aliases, different names across the decades, but the handwriting analysis software flagged consistent patterns. The same person had signed documents in 1947, 1963, 1981, 1999, and 2014. She brought her findings to the Shredder on a tablet, the data organized in layers, each layer peeling back another shell to reveal the structure underneath. "The money trail is old," she said. "Decades old. Whoever funded this has been operating under shifting identities since before either of us was born. The financial structure is designed to survive the death of any single identity. It regenerates, like a quirk." The Shredder scrolled through the data. His expression didn't change, but Mina knew him well enough to read the stillness. He was absorbing, processing, filing. "The handwriting," he said. Match across all documents. 97% probability it's the same person. And the messenger? Low tier. Hired through a cutout service. He genuinely doesn't know who employed him. I had 2 operatives verify, separately using different methods. He's clean, just a delivery boy. The shredder set the tablet down. He looked at the wall, past it, through it, into the architecture of a conspiracy that was older than his mother's life. There is only one person in Japan, he said, who has maintained operational continuity across 8 decades. One person with the resources, the patience, and the arrogance to send that letter. Mina waited. She already knew. She'd reached the same conclusion 3 days ago and spent the remaining time hoping she was wrong. All for one, the shredder said. The name landed in the room like a blade hitting wood. Mina nodded. The symbology matches. The financial architecture matches, the timeline matches, and she hesitated, the biological connection. If all for one is Hisashi Midoriya, he is. Then the letter isn't just a taunt, it's a claim. He's telling you that he made you, that everything, the vault, the training, your mother, was part of his design. The shredder was quiet for a long time. The bass hummed around them. Somewhere in the residential wing, Kurai was working on her studies. The AI's educational programs had been salvaged and loaded onto standalone systems, and the girl consumed knowledge the way her father consumed opponents. He let her die, the shredder said. His voice was the same cold, weighted instrument it always was. But underneath, deep underneath, in the bedrock, something shifted. He engineered the conditions, the unanswered calls, the stalled investigation. He made sure nobody helped her. Mina said nothing. There was nothing to say. He thinks I am his weapon, the shredder continued. He planted a seed and he tended the soil and he waited for the harvest. The vault, the technology, my quirk inherited through my mother, which means inherited through the bloodline he chose specifically. Every variable accounted for, every outcome anticipated. He picked up the tablet again, looked at the data, at the decades of manipulation, patience, and control embedded in the financial records. He miscalculated one variable, the shredder said. Which one? Me. 3 weeks later, the shredder returned to the cavern alone. He hadn't been back since the relocation. The original base, Krell's vault beneath Dagoba Municipal Park, had been mothballed when the Foot Clan shifted to distributed operations. The AI systems were in standby mode. The weapons racks were empty. Everything portable had been moved. The armor maintenance bay was dark. The blue lights in the walls still pulsed, but slower now, like a heartbeat winding down. He went because the intelligence pointed there. Because the financial trail Mina had uncovered contained a secondary thread, older, deeper, predating the Foot Clan entirely, that connected to energy readings from beneath the park. Readings that matched Utrom Technology's signatures. Readings that predated Izuku's discovery of the vault by 40 years. All for One had been here before, long before a 10-year-old boy fell through a hologram and put his hand on a needle. All for One had stood in this cavern, studied Krell's technology, read the DNA lock on the system, and made a decision. He had decided to breed a key. The shredder walked through the cavern. The blue light painted his armor in cold fire. The consoles were dim. The pods, the ones filled with green liquid that he'd never investigated too closely, were still and dark. The weapons racks stood empty, their slots gaping like missing teeth. He stopped at the central console. He activated the hologram projector. Krell materialized above the platform, bladed, massive, the alien warlord's recorded ghost flickering in the half-light. "You are the shredder now," Krell said. The same words. Always the same words. "I know," Izuku said. "I've been the shredder for 8 years. Tell me something new." The hologram didn't respond. It was a recording. It could not adapt, could not learn, could not hear the boy who had outgrown it, but something in the cavern could. "I wondered when you'd come back." The voice came from the dark, from the deep end of the cavern, past the weapons racks, past the maintenance bays, past the security doors that opened only for the shredder's DNA. A voice that was calm and warm and patient in the way that poison is patient. The shredder turned. His blades extended. His helmet's display lit up, thermal imaging, motion tracking, quirk factor detection. The readings made his blood go cold. 17 quirks, active, stacked, radiating from a single source. All for One stepped out of the shadows. He was tall, taller than the shredder expected. His face was a ruin, scarred, cratered, the legacy of a fight with All Might that had cost him his eyes and most of his features. But the scars had healed in ways that normal tissue didn't. Lumpy, organic, the flesh rearranging itself with a dozen different regeneration quirks fighting for dominance. He wore a black suit. Expensive. Tailored. The kind of suit a man wears when he wants you to know that violence is beneath him. Even as he prepares to commit it, he had no eyes. He didn't need them. The quirks he carried included at least 3 forms of extrasensory perception: infrared, echolocation, and something that read bioelectric fields. He saw more without eyes than most people saw with them. "Hello, Izuku," All for One said. The Shredder's blades were fully extended. His weight was forward. His quirk reached out, feeling the metal in the cavern, every bolt, every panel, every weapon he hadn't taken when he left. "You do not use that name," the Shredder said. "You have not earned it." All for One smiled. The expression was grotesque on his ruined face, the muscles pulling in directions they weren't designed for, the scarred skin stretching over gaps where features should have been. "I gave you that name," he said. "Your mother wanted to name you Hisashi Jr. I overruled her. Izuku, green. I wanted you to grow. You wanted a weapon. I wanted a son." All for One spread his hands. The gesture was expansive, inviting, the body language of a man who believed he was in control. "I wanted someone who could carry what I have built. Someone worthy. Someone with the intelligence, the will, and the power to stand beside me, not behind me, beside, and rule. You let my mother die. I freed you from a limitation." The words landed. The Shredder's hands tightened on his gauntlet grips. Behind the faceplate, his jaw locked. Something in his chest, something old, something that he thought he'd buried in an empty apartment 8 years ago, ignited. He held it, controlled it, let the fire burn hot, and then channeled it into the cold, because cold was where the Shredder lived, and cold was where he killed. "You knew about this cavern," the Shredder said. 40 years, All for One confirmed. "I found it in 1984. Fascinating technology. Far beyond anything this planet has produced. The DNA lock was elegant. I couldn't crack it without a compatible user, and the compatible profile required a very specific set of genetic markers. Telekinetic potential, a particular neural architecture, and a mitochondrial pattern that matched a bloodline Krell had cataloged during his time on Earth. My mother's bloodline. Your mother's bloodline. It took me years to find her, and years more to ensure the pairing produced the right combination. You were the 3rd attempt. The first 2 pregnancies didn't carry the markers. Your mother was devastated both times. I was merely recalculating." The Shredder's quirk pulsed. Every loose piece of metal in the cavern vibrated, a low hum, the sound of 100 objects straining against their fastenings. All for One felt it. He tilted his head. The extrasensory quirks painted a picture of the electromagnetic field around the Shredder's body, and what he saw impressed him. "Remarkable," he said. "You've developed the telekinesis far beyond what I projected. The range, the precision, the multi-target capability. Inko could barely pull a TV remote. You've turned a party trick into a battlefield quirk." "You came here to offer me something," the Shredder said. "Speak, then leave." All for One clasped his hands behind his back. The posture of a professor, a mentor, a father in his own twisted mind. "A partnership," he said. "Your infrastructure is exceptional. The Foot Clan's reach, its discipline, its intelligence network. You've built something in 8 years that took me decades. I respect that. I am, frankly, in awe of it. You are everything I designed you to be and more." "I am nothing you designed. You are everything I designed. The vault, the training, the armor, the rage. Your mother's death gave you the rage, and rage is the fuel that powers empires. I designed all of it, every variable, every outcome. Not every outcome." All for One paused. The smile twitched. "Not every outcome," the Shredder repeated. "You designed a weapon. I built a world. You planned for a son who would kneel. I do not kneel. You anticipated rage. I turned rage into discipline. You calculated that I would be grateful for the power you arranged for me to find. Instead, I am here, in the dark, looking at the man who murdered my mother through negligence and cowardice, and feeling nothing that resembles gratitude." All for One's smile faded. The warmth, the performance of warmth, drained from his voice. "I am offering you the world, Izuku. My power, my network. A century of accumulated resources, knowledge, and quirks. Combined with what you've built, we would be unstoppable. Japan would be ours within a year, the rest of the world within a decade. I don't share power, neither do I. That's why this would work. We are the same. We are nothing alike. The Shredder's voice dropped, quieter, heavier, the most dangerous register. You used my mother's grief to try to control me. You let her die because a living Izuku Midoriya was a leash on a weapon you wanted free. You are not my father. You are a mistake I will correct. The cavern went silent. The blue lights pulsed. Krell's hologram flickered in the background. The dead aliens recorded Ghost watching two living monsters face each other across 10 feet of stone floor, all for one side. The sound was ancient, tired, genuine perhaps, in the way that a predator's patience is genuine when the prey stops running. I had hoped, he said, that you would be reasonable. I had hoped, the Shredder said, that you would be worth fighting. Railer, all for one, attacked. There was no wind up. No warning. One moment he was standing with his hands clasped behind his back, and the next a column of compressed air, generated by a quirk that weaponized atmospheric pressure, shot from his palm and hit the Shredder in the chest like a freight train. The Shredder flew backward. His boots dragged across the stone floor, carving grooves. He hit the central console, the one he'd activated 1,000 times, the one that had been the heart of the Foot Clan's operations for years, and the console shattered. Screens exploded. Circuitry sparked. Trell's hologram scattered into static and died. The Shredder was on his feet before the debris stopped falling. His armor had absorbed the majority of the blast. The chest plate was dented, the impact dampeners screaming, but he was upright, blades out, moving, all for one pressed. A second quirk. Kinetic amplification, stacking momentum on momentum, turned his next step into a charge that covered the distance between them in a blink. His fist, enhanced by 3 different strength quirks, swung for the Shredder's head. The Shredder ducked. The fist passed over his helmet and hit the cavern wall. The wall cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the stone, and chunks of rock fell from the ceiling. The Shredder countered. His right gauntlet blade came up in a tight arc aimed at All for One's ribcage. The alien-forged edge bit into the suit jacket through the fabric and found something hard. A quirk that hardened skin to steel. The blade scored a groove across All for One's ribs, but didn't penetrate. All for One backhanded the Shredder. The blow caught him on the side of the helmet and sent him staggering. Stars burst behind his eyes. His helmet's display flickered. Damage to the left optical sensor. He compensated. Shifted to the right eye's feed. Kept moving. He pulled every loose bolt, every screw, every fragment of the destroyed console. A storm of metal debris shot toward All for One from every direction. Hundreds of pieces converging on a single point, screaming through the air. All for One raised a barrier, a telekinetic quirk of his own, stolen decades ago from someone whose name he'd forgotten. The metal fragments hit the barrier and stopped, vibrating in midair, held by opposing forces. For a moment, the cavern was frozen. 2 telekinetic fields pushing against each other. The metal caught between them. Trembling, All for One's field was stronger. He had more raw power. The fragments began to push back toward the Shredder. The Shredder let go. The metal dropped. But in the instant of All for One's counter-push, the Shredder had already moved, left, around the barrier, closing the distance. His blade came in low, below the hardened skin, targeting the soft tissue of the inner thigh. All for One twisted. The blade missed the femoral artery by an inch. It cut deep into the quadriceps instead, a gush of dark blood, the first wound of the fight. All for One grunted. A sound of surprise more than pain, he fired back. A blast of concentrated heat from his left hand. A fire. Quirk pushed to its extreme, a jet of white-blue flame that turned the air into a furnace. The Shredder raised his arms. The Utrom armor held. The heat dissipated across the alloy surface, conducted and dispersed by a metallurgy that was designed to survive re-entry temperatures. But the interior temperature spiked. His skin burned beneath the armor. The padding smoked. He charged through the fire. Both blades forward. A double thrust aimed at All for One's chest. All for One caught the blades. Both hands wrapping around the alien metal, his skin-hardening quirk and his strength quirks holding them in place. The edges bit into his palms. The Utrom alloy didn't care about his quirk any more than it had cared about Overhaul's stone, and blood ran down the blades. But he held them. They were face to face, the Shredder's red eyes behind the faceplate burning. All for One's ruined face, eyeless, smiling. "You're good," All for One said, "better than I expected." The Shredder headbutted him. The faceplate of the Shredder's helmet, the hardest point on the armor, a ridge of Utrom alloy designed to survive impacts that would shatter any material on Earth, drove into the bridge of All for One's nose. The cartilage, already ruined from his fight with All Might, collapsed entirely. Blood exploded across both of them. All for One's grip on the blades faltered. The Shredder tore free. He buried his right blade in All for One's shoulder, drove it through the muscle, through the scapula, through the suit jacket, and pinned All for One to the cavern wall behind him. All for One screamed. The sound was raw, ancient, the scream of a being that had lived for a century and forgotten what pain felt like. The Shredder drove his left blade toward All for One's throat. All for One detonated. The quirk was something unnamed, something stolen from a victim whose entire body could convert to explosive force. All for One channeled it through his skin, a shockwave that erupted from his body in every direction. The concussive blast blew the Shredder off his feet and sent him tumbling across the cavern floor. The blade in All for One's shoulder ripped free, not cleanly, tearing muscle and bone as it went, and the wall behind him cratered. The cavern groaned. The ceiling cracked. Dust fell in sheets. The blue veins in the walls, Trell's power network, the lighting system that had been the cavern's heartbeat for centuries, flickered and died. For a moment, everything was black, then red. The Shredder's helmet eyes cutting through the dark and blue-white. All for One, glowing with stacked quirks, rising from the damaged wall with his shoulder hanging at a wrong angle and blood running from his face and his palms and the ruin of his nose. "You pinned me," All for One said. His voice was thin now, strained, but amused, still amused. "Nobody has pinned me since All Might. I am not All Might. No, you are not." All for One fired everything, a barrage of quirks, air cannon, fire jet, kinetic burst, something that warped the space between them, something that pulled at the Shredder's armor from the molecular level. The attacks came simultaneously, overlapping, a wall of destructive force that filled the cavern like a flood. The Shredder moved. He used his quirk, not to attack, but to fly. He anchored on the metal panels in the ceiling 50 feet up and pulled himself toward them. His body rocketed upward as the attack wave passed beneath him, shredding the floor, destroying the weapons racks, cracking the pods of green liquid that burst in cascades of bioluminescent fluid. From the ceiling, he looked down. All for One stood in the destruction, bleeding, glowing, every stolen quirk burning at maximum output. The cavern was coming apart around them. The walls were fracturing. The floor was splitting. 8 years of the Shredder's home, the place where he'd trained, where he'd built the Foot Clan, where he'd held Kurai through her first nightmare and let Mina teach his daughter to dance, was dying. The Shredder let go of the ceiling and dropped, 50 feet, straight down. Both blades extended, his body a missile aimed at All for One's head. All for One looked up. His extrasensory quirks painted the falling figure in perfect detail. The velocity, the trajectory, the angle of the blades. He raised both hands. The air cannon fired upward. The Shredder twisted in midair. The blast grazed his side. The left hip plate shattered. Pain lanced through his body. But he cleared the column of compressed air and came down 2 feet to All for One's left. His blade found All for One's thigh, the same leg he'd cut before, the same wound, deeper this time. The alien edge passed through the hardened skin quirk like it was tissue paper. The muscle parted, the blade hit bone. All for One's left leg buckled. He dropped to one knee. The Shredder was already behind him, spinning, the other blade coming around in a horizontal arc aimed at the back of All for One's neck. All for One threw himself forward. The blade whistled through the space his neck had occupied and scored a deep groove in his back instead. Shoulder blade to shoulder blade, cutting through the suit, through the skin, through the muscle. Blood sprayed in a wide arc across the broken stone floor. All for One rolled, came up, fired a blast of concentrated force directly at the Shredder's chest. Point blank, the Shredder's armor absorbed it, but the chest plate cracked. The internal systems screamed. The HUD display went haywire, feeding scrambled data. The Shredder ripped his helmet off. He didn't need it. He'd fought without it before. His green eyes found All for One in the dark, bleeding, broken, still standing on one good leg, still smiling, that ruined smile. "You can't beat me," All for One said. His voice was weaker now, blood loss. The shoulder, the leg, the back. "I have 100 quirks, you have 1. The math is wrong," the Shredder said. He pulled. Everything metal in the cavern answered. Every panel, every bolt, every fragment of the destroyed console, every shard of the broken weapons racks, every piece of the shattered pods, every screw and rivet and joining pin in the walls and ceiling and floor. The Shredder reached out with his quirk and grabbed it all. Not dozens of objects, not hundreds, but thousands. And he pulled. The cavern imploded. Metal ripped from the walls, the ceiling panels tore free and rained down. The floor buckled as its supports were yanked inward. A hurricane of metal converged on a single point, All for One. The fragments hit him from every direction. They weren't aimed, they weren't controlled. They were a tsunami, a wall of metal that buried him, like battered him, drove him to the ground under the sheer weight and volume of the assault. His quirks fired. Barrier, repulsion, detonation, but the metal kept coming. There was too much. The Shredder had turned the entire cavern into a weapon, and the cavern was big. All for One went down. Under the metal, under the rubble, under the weight of an empire's tomb collapsing on top of him. The Shredder stood in the center of the devastation. His armor was cracked, scorched, bleeding, his own blood running from a dozen cuts where the armor had failed. His left hip throbbed, his ribs ached, his head rang from the shockwave, but he was standing. The pile of metal shifted. All for One's hand burst through, clawing, grasping a quirk-enhanced limb that shoved debris aside. He dragged himself out, bloodied, broken, one leg useless, both arms shaking. The suit was ruined, the scars on his face were reopened. He looked for the first time in the Shredder's presence like what he truly was. Old, damaged, held together by stolen power and stolen time. He knelt in the rubble, breathing hard. The quirks flickered around him, some fading, their user limits reached, the stolen biological mechanisms burning out under the strain of simultaneous activation. "Remarkable," All for One whispered, blood dripped from his lips. "Truly remarkable." The Shredder walked toward him. Each step crunched on broken metal and stone. The cavern was open to the sky now. The ceiling had given way in the collapse, and the night air poured in through a jagged hole 20 feet wide. Moonlight hit the rubble. Stars were visible. The world above, for the first time, could see into the Shredder's birthplace. All for One looked up at his son, at the boy he had designed, the weapon he had forged, the empire he had intended to claim. "You cannot kill me," All for One said. "I have regeneration quirks stacked 6 deep. My body will rebuild. It always rebuilds. You can break me, but you cannot end me." "I know," the Shredder said. He stopped 3 feet from All for One. He looked down at the man who had planted the seed and shaped the soil and let the rain fall on the grave of the woman who had carried the seed to term. "I am going to destroy everything you've built," the Shredder said. "Your network, your operatives, your hidden facilities, your legacy. I am going to tear it out of the world root by root, and when I am done, there will be nothing left of All for One except a name that people use to frighten children." All for One stared. The eyeless face registered something it hadn't shown in decades. Uncertainty. "But not tonight," the Shredder said. "Tonight, you leave, because killing you here would make me your legacy, and I am no one's legacy but my own." All for One said nothing. The quirks flickered. The regeneration was already working, the bleeding slowing, the wounds beginning to close. His body was knitting itself back together with the patience of a thing that had done this 100 times. He activated a quirk. Spatial displacement, a short-range teleport. The air warped around him. His body blurred. "This isn't over," All for One said. "No," the Shredder agreed, "but the ending is already written." All for One vanished. The Shredder stood alone in the ruins of Krell's vault. The blue lights were dead. The hologram projector was smashed. The console that had been the Foot Clan's nerve center for years was scrap metal. The walls were cracked. The ceiling was gone. Moonlight and dust fell in equal measure. He looked around, at the place where he'd learned to fight, where he'd learned to lead, where he'd put on the armor for the first time and heard a dead alien's voice tell him he was worthy. where Kurai had taken her first steps without flinching, where Mina had filled the silence with laughter and acid and the stubborn, relentless brightness that the darkness needed. Gone. He picked up his helmet from the rubble. The faceplate was cracked. One eye lens was shattered. The HUD was dead. He held it in his hands, the symbol, the identity, the face the world feared, and it was broken. He put it on anyway. He climbed out through the hole in the ceiling. The night was cold. The park was silent. The city glowed on the horizon, oblivious. The Shredder stood at the edge of the crater that had been his home and looked at the wreckage for a long time. He did not mourn. Mourning was for things that were finished. He turned toward the city. The armor was cracked. The helmet was damaged. The cavern was gone. The Foot Clan was intact. The network was intact. The people, Mina, Mirko, the operatives, the soldiers, the civilians who depended on his protection were intact. Kurai was safe in a secondary facility 30 miles from here, surrounded by guards who would die before letting anyone through the door. He walked toward the city. He would build again. Faster, better, harder to break. He always built. The relocation took 72 hours, not because the logistics were complicated. The Foot Clan had contingency plans for contingency plans. The distributed network structure that Mina had designed after the original cavern was mothballed included 10 hidden facilities across the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, each capable of serving as a temporary command center. Within 6 hours of the cavern's destruction, the Foot Clan's operations were running from 3 of those facilities simultaneously. The workload distributed like a nervous system rerouting around damaged tissue. The 72 hours were for rebuilding. Salvage teams went into the ruins of the cavern under cover of darkness and pulled out everything that could be saved. Data cores, Utrom alloy fragments, weapons, components. Most of it was destroyed. Some of it was recoverable. A few critical pieces, the bioextraction tools, the quirk analysis systems, the metallurgical schematics that described the composition of the armor's alloy, had survived in hardened storage units that even the cavern's collapse couldn't crush. The Shredder oversaw all of it personally. Cracked armor, broken helmet. He stood in the rubble and directed the recovery with the same cold precision he brought to everything else. Mina was beside him. She'd arrived 2 hours after the fight, moving fast through the city on foot, her Foot Clan gear splashed with mud and her face tight with something that wasn't fear but was closely related. She looked at the cavern, at the destruction, at the moonlit crater where the training bays used to be. Was it him? She asked. Yes. All for one. Yes. Did you kill him? No. Mina absorbed that. She didn't ask why. She'd been with the Shredder long enough to know that his decisions always had architecture, reasons that connected to other reasons, a structure of logic that might not be visible from the outside but was always there. Okay, she said. Then we work. She rolled up her sleeves, literally, the acid-resistant fabric of her Foot Clan field jacket, peeling back to reveal the pink skin underneath, and started coordinating the salvage. Mirko arrived at dawn. She came alone, in civilian clothes, white t-shirt, cargo pants, boots, her rabbit ears flat against her head, which meant she was angry. She climbed down into the crater, surveyed the damage, and found the Shredder standing at the center of it, with a Utrom data core in his hands and dust in his hair. She looked at him, at the cracks in his armor, at the bruise spreading up from beneath his collar, at the way he held his left side, the hip where All for One's blast had shattered the plate. You're hurt, she said. It's managed. It looks like you got hit by a building. A building would have been simpler. She stepped closer, her hand scarred, calloused, strong enough to bend steel, reached out and touched the cracked chest plate. Her fingers traced the fracture line. The armor was warm from his body heat. Underneath, she could feel his heartbeat. Steady, strong, the same as always. He's going to come back, she said. Yes, and you're going to be ready. I am always ready. She pulled her hand back, looked at him with an expression that was part anger, part respect, and part something deeper that neither of them ever named because naming it would make it soft, and they were not soft people. Then stop standing in a hole and come build something, she said. He almost smiled. Almost. The new Foot Clan was leaner, faster, harder to kill. The Shredder abandoned the single base model entirely. The 10 distributed facilities became the permanent architecture. each one serving a specific function, none of them holding enough to be critical, all of them connected by encrypted communication systems that the Shredder built from salvaged Utrum components and his own reverse engineering. He spent weeks in the fabrication lab, a converted warehouse in the industrial district that Mina's operatives had secured and fortified. The Utrum technology was gone, mostly. The AI was gone, wiped in the cavern's destruction, Krell's ghost finally and permanently dead. But the Shredder had spent 6 years working with that technology. He understood its principles, the materials science, the energy systems, the computational architecture. He couldn't replicate it perfectly. The manufacturing techniques required equipment that didn't exist on Earth, but he could approximate. He could adapt. He could build things that were 90% as good as the originals, and 90% of Utrum technology was still 3 generations ahead of anything else on the planet. New armor. The same silhouette, shoulder blades, forearm gauntlets, the helmet with the burning red eyes, but reinforced. The alloy was a hybrid, Utrum-derived composites layered with Earth-manufactured carbon fiber matrices. Lighter, tougher. The blades were new too, forged from the salvaged Utrum alloy fragments, folded and refolded using techniques the Shredder had memorized from Krell's metallurgical archives. They were sharper than the originals, new systems. The HUD was rebuilt from scratch, no Utrum processors this time, but custom-designed electronics that combined conventional chipsets with quirk analysis algorithms the Shredder wrote himself. The quirk analysis wasn't as fast as the original. It was fast enough. New weapons. The shuriken, the kunai, the gauntlet blades, all reforged, but also new designs. Electromagnetic disruptors small enough to fit in a palm, smoke devices that generated disorientation fields based on principles the Shredder had derived from Utrom's sensory technology. Communication gear that was, for all practical purposes, unhackable. He built all of it with his own hands. Mina helped. Mirko helped, not with the technical work, but with the testing. She kicked every piece of armor he made until it either survived or broke, and if it broke, he rebuilt it until it didn't. The Foot Clan's human resources grew too. The Shredder had resisted expansion before. He preferred a small elite organization, controlled from the center, answerable only to him. The cavern's destruction changed his thinking. A single point of failure had nearly cost him everything. He needed depth. He needed redundancy. He needed people. He started recruiting with purpose. The first wave was fighters, former criminals from the organizations he'd dismantled, the ones who'd shown discipline and loyalty during the purges. They were retrained, retested, and integrated into the Foot Clan's operational structure. The second wave was something different. People the hero system had failed. Quirk holders whose abilities had been classified as villainous by the registry. Quirks that manipulated fear or pain or perception, the kind of powers that made the Commission nervous and got their holders marked, surveilled, and marginalized. Civilians from neighborhoods the heroes had written off. The flood zones, the mutation districts, the areas where property values were too low to justify hero patrols. Former heroes who had burned out under the Commission's pressure and been discarded. Their licenses revoked, their careers ended, their skills and experience thrown away because they'd stopped being profitable. The Shredder gave them a place, a purpose, a flag that wasn't a hero agency's logo or a government seal, but a steel blade on a black field, the Foot Clan's emblem, simple and final. He was building more than an army. He was building a society, a parallel world that ran beneath the hero system, that served the people the hero system ignored, that provided justice where the heroes provided performance. Kurai watched all of it. She was 10 now. Sharp, quiet. She had her father's eyes, green, steady, watching everything, processing constantly. The cavern's destruction had shaken her. She'd felt the tremor from the secondary facility 30 miles away. She'd watched the Foot Clan soldiers go tense, watched Mina's face go white, watched the communications channels fill with coded urgency. She'd known something was wrong before anyone told her. When the Shredder returned, cracked armor, broken helmet, dried blood on his jaw, she'd run to him. She'd wrapped her arms around his armored waist and pressed her face against the chest plate and held on. He'd put his hand on her head, just rested it there. The gauntlet, blades retracted, heavy and warm on her white hair. "I'm here," he'd said. "I know." She'd answered. But you almost weren't. He hadn't argued because she was right. 3 weeks after the relocation, Kurai came to him in the command facility's small common area. He was reviewing network reports on a tablet. She climbed into the chair across from him and sat with her legs tucked underneath her, the way she always sat when she had something to say. Dad. Yes. Why don't you just take over? Openly. You have the Foot Clan. You have Mirko. You have Mina. You have the technology and the soldiers and the money. Why are you still in the shadows? He set the tablet down. He looked at her, at the girl he'd carried out of Overhaul's basement, who had been smaller than a thought and just as fragile, and who was now sitting across from him asking questions that most adults couldn't formulate. Because the world is not ready for what I am, he said. The day I step into the light, they will spend every resource they have trying to destroy me instead of accepting what I am building. The shadows protect the work. When the work is done, when it cannot be undone, then the light can come, and they will have no choice but to live in the world I made. Kurai turned this over. Her red eyes, Aries eyes, though she'd never go by that name again, were serious. That sounds like a lot of patience, she said. It is. Is patience a weapon? He looked at her. A flicker behind his eyes, something warm, something that the armor could never cover. Patience is the most dangerous weapon there is, he said. Any fool can be violent. Any fool can be fast. But the person who waits, who lets the world move while they stay still, who builds in the dark while everyone else is fighting in the light, that person wins. Always. Because by the time anyone notices what they've done, it's already finished. Kurai nodded slowly. Then she grinned. Sudden, bright, all Mina's influence. Okay, but I'm still going to learn how to punch stuff too. Mirko will teach you. She already is. She says I have good hips. She would know. Kurai laughed. It filled the room the way her laughter always did. An impossible sound, a miracle of survival. A little girl who had been born into a cage and now sat across from a conqueror and called him dad and meant it. The shredder picked up his tablet. He went back to work. But the line of his mouth, just barely, just enough that Kurai could see it, curved upward. Stain escaped from Tartarus on a Tuesday. The prison, Japan's most secure facility for villain incarceration, had been struggling since the Commission's fall. Budget cuts, staff turnover, security protocols that had been designed by Commission officials who were now under investigation or in prison themselves. The infrastructure was intact, but the human element was eroding. Guards were overworked, underpaid, and afraid. The inmates knew it. Chizome Akaguro, the hero killer, Stain, had been patient. He'd waited. He'd watched the guards change shifts. He'd listened to the talk in the corridors, the whispered conversations about the shredder, about the Commission's collapse, about the chaos in the hero world. He'd heard everything. And when a rolling power outage hit the facility, caused by a failure in the backup generator system that may or may not have been helped along by someone on the outside, Stain moved. He killed 2 guards. He didn't enjoy it. He didn't waste time. He moved through the prison's maintenance corridors with the silent, lethal efficiency of a man who had spent his entire adult life studying movement and violence, and the shortest distance between a blade and a throat. He was out within 9 minutes. Into the night. Into a city that had changed beyond recognition since his incarceration. Stain's philosophy had not changed. The hero system was corrupt. False heroes, people who wore the title for fame, for money, for power, were a cancer. They needed to be cut out. The only heroes worth the name were those who acted out of genuine conviction, who bled for strangers, who would give their lives without asking for credit. By Stain's reckoning, there was exactly one hero left in Japan who met that standard, Rumi Usagiyama. But Mirko had resigned. She'd handed back her license. She'd walked away from the hero system entirely. And instead of using her freedom to become what Stain believed she could be, a true hero, unshackled from the bureaucracy, serving justice on her own terms, she'd aligned with the shredder, with a criminal, with the very shadow that was choking the hero world to death. Stain couldn't accept that. Mirko was the last real hero. If she fell, if she stayed with the shredder, then the concept of heroism itself was dead. And Stain had given too much blood for that concept to let it die without a fight. He started with messages, carved into walls, painted in blood. Not his own, but the blood of 3 mid-rank heroes who had the misfortune of operating in areas Mirko was known to frequent. The heroes weren't killed, they were maimed. Cut. Left alive and conscious with Stain's message carved into the walls of the alleyways where they fell. The false must fall, the real must rise. Mirko, come home. Mirko read the messages. She read the incident reports. She looked at the photographs of the maimed heroes, their wounds, their terror, the calligraphy of violence that Stain practiced with the same devotion a monk gives to scripture. She wasn't afraid. Mirko didn't get afraid, but she was angry. The kind of anger that came from being claimed by someone she hadn't asked to be claimed by. The Shredder read the same reports from his command facility. He sat in his chair, new, functional, bolted to the floor of the primary operations room, and reviewed the data with Mina standing beside him. He's targeting heroes near Mirko's known locations, Mina said. 3 in 2 weeks. All of them were patrol routes that overlapped with places Mirko has been seen since her resignation. He's drawing a map. The map points to her. He wants her attention. He has it. She's ready to go find him tonight. The Shredder was quiet for a moment. He knew Stain's file. He'd studied it years ago. The man's history, his philosophy, his fighting style, his quirk. Blood curdle. One taste of an opponent's blood and the opponent was paralyzed, the duration dependent on blood type. It was a quirk that turned every cut into a potential end state. One nick, one scratch, one drop of blood on his tongue, and the fight was over. The Shredder bled. The Shredder had bled in every fight he'd ever been in. His armor was good, but it wasn't perfect. All for One had proven that. I will handle Stain, the Shredder said. Mina raised an eyebrow. Mirko won't like that. Mirko will understand that Stain's quirk is specifically designed to neutralize fighters who rely on close combat. She fights with her legs. Her legs bleed when they're cut. One cut, one taste, and the strongest fighter in Japan is a statue. And you? I bleed too. But I do not need to get close to kill. He tracked Stain to Hosu. The city hadn't changed much since Stain's original reign of terror. The same narrow streets, the same dark alleys, the same neglected infrastructure that made it a perfect hunting ground for a man who turned shadows into weapons. The Shredder found the safe house at 2 a.m., a condemned building on the city's east side. Structural damage from a villain attack 3 years ago, never repaired, the kind of place the city government put on a list and forgot about. Stain was inside. The Shredder could see the thermal signature through his helmet's imaging system, a single body, seated, still, radiating the steady heat of a man who was either meditating or waiting. He was waiting. The Shredder entered through the roof. He cut through the access hatch with his gauntlet blade and dropped into the top floor. Dust. Silence. The floor creaked under his armored weight heated through the building, each floor darker than the last. The thermal signature was on the ground level, a large open space that had probably been a warehouse floor before the building was condemned. He reached the ground floor and stepped through a doorway into the open space. Stain was sitting on a concrete block in the center of the room, legs crossed, blades sheathed. He wore the same costume as always. The dark wrappings, the red scarf, the bandana that covered the lower half of his face. His eyes, flat, steady, burning with the conviction of a zealot, tracked the Shredder's entrance without surprise. I wondered how long it would take you, Stain said. The Shredder stopped 15 feet from him. The distance was intentional. Stain's effective range with a thrown blade was 12 feet. The Shredder liked his margins. You are threatening someone under my protection, like the Shredder said. I am calling out to the last hero worth saving. You are the one who corrupted her. Mirko made her choice. She chose freely. She chose wrong. Stain stood, slow, deliberate. His hand moved to the hilt of the katana on his back. The hero system is dying. You're helping it die. I should be thanking you for that. You've done more to expose the corruption than I ever managed from a prison cell. But you've also taken the one person who could have rebuilt it. Mirko was real. Mirko was pure, and you turned her into your weapon. She is no one's weapon. She is my equal. Stain's eyes narrowed. The Shredder has no equals. The Shredder has tools. You do not know me. I know what you've done. I've watched from behind bars. I've listened. I've read every report. You destroyed the top heroes. You gutted the commission. You built a shadow empire on the bones of the old world. You are efficient, you are ruthless, you might even be right about some of it, but you are not a hero. And Mirko, standing beside you, stops being one. She was never a hero because of a title. She was a hero because of who she is. The title was a cage. I opened the cage, you put in a different one. They stood across from each other, 15 feet, an ideology between them. You are a scalpel, the Shredder said. You cut out the parts you find diseased, one hero at a time, one ally at a time, one bloody message at a time, and when you're done cutting, you move on to the next target because the disease is everywhere and your scalpel is very, very small. He stepped forward. One step, 14 feet now. I am building a new world. Your scalpel is getting in the way of the surgery. Stain drew his katana. The steel rang in the quiet. The blade was simple, good steel, well-maintained, nothing fancy. Stain didn't need fancy, he needed sharp. Then let's see which of us is better at cutting. Stain moved first. He was fast, the kind of fast that came from a lifetime of obsessive training and a body that had been forged into a single purpose. The katana came in low, a sweeping cut aimed at the Shredder's thigh, the same area where the armor met the joint, where movement required a gap in the plating. The Shredder's gauntlet blade intercepted. Steel met Utrom alloy. The katana held, good steel, well forged, but the vibration ran up Stain's arms like an electric shock. He disengaged, spun, came in from the other side. A thrust aimed at the gap beneath the Shredder's right arm. The Shredder turned his body, letting the thrust pass through empty space, and drove his elbow down on the flat of Stain's blade. The sword was forced toward the floor. Stain wrenched it free and jumped backward, landing in a crouch. He was testing, feeling the range, the speed, the response time. The Shredder recognized the pattern, a fighter mapping his opponent's defenses before committing to a real attack. Two more exchanges, a high cut that the Shredder blocked with crossed blades, a low slash that he sidestepped. Stain was reading him, building a picture. Looking for the gap that would let the blade find skin, because that was all Stain needed. One cut, one taste, and the fight was his. The Shredder knew it. Every second of engagement was a second of risk. The longer this went, the more chances Stain had to draw blood. The Shredder needed to end this fast, or end it from a distance. He pulled. The katana lurched in Stain's hands. The metal of the blade responded to the Shredder's quirk, pulling toward him, trying to rip free from Stain's grip. Stain held on. His fingers were iron. His grip was legendary, but the pull disrupted his stance. He stumbled forward, off balance. For half a second, the Shredder drove his knee into Stain's chest. The impact lifted the hero killer off his feet. Stain flew backward, hit the concrete block he'd been sitting on, and rolled over it. He came up on the other side, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his ribs. Telekinesis, Stain said. He was reassessing. The flat eyes were calculating. Metal specific. Yes. Stain dropped the katana. It clattered to the floor. He drew two shorter blades, his throwing knives, ceramic-handled, minimal metal content. He'd adapted in seconds. The katana was a liability against a telekinetic who pulled metal. The ceramic knives were almost immune. The Shredder noted the adjustment. Stain was smart. Stain was adaptable. Stain was, in his own way, everything the hero system wasn't. Genuine, committed, willing to suffer for his beliefs. Stain came in again. Faster now. The ceramic knives were lighter, quicker, and he used them with a precision that was breathtaking. Short, controlled slashes aimed at every gap in the armor, wrist, neck, inner elbow, the eye slits of the helmet. He was going for blood. Just a drop. Just one. The Shredder blocked, dodged, parried. His gauntlet blades were longer, heavier, built for power strikes, not the kind of close-range knife fighting Stain specialized in. He adjusted, shortened his movements, tightened his guard, kept his exposed skin behind the armor's coverage. Stain feinted left, came right. The knife slashed at the Shredder's throat, the gap between the helmet and the chest plate. The Shredder jerked his chin down. The blade scored across the bottom edge of the faceplate and sparked. Close. Very close, the Shredder grabbed Stain's wrist. The gauntlet closed like a vice. He felt the bones grind. Stain hissed through his teeth but didn't drop the knife. He twisted, turned the grab into leverage, brought his other knife up in an underhand stab aimed at the gap beneath the Shredder's arm. The blade found the gap. It was a shallow cut. The knife's edge caught the bodysuit beneath the armor and sliced through the material. A line of red opened across the Shredder's ribs. Shallow, less than an inch deep, almost nothing. But Stain's tongue was already moving. The knife came away wet. He brought it to his mouth. The Shredder's quirk fired. The ceramic knives had minimal metal, but minimal wasn't zero. The tang, the metal core that ran through the handle, connecting the blade to the pommel, responded. Both knives wrenched out of Stain's hands. They flew, not toward the Shredder, but sideways, embedding themselves in the concrete wall 20 feet away. Stain's tongue caught air. The blood on the knife was gone with the knife. His eyes went wide. For the first time in the fight, something like surprise crossed his face. The Shredder didn't give him time to process. He released Stain's wrist and struck a straight palm to the sternum that sent the hero killer sliding backward across the concrete floor. Before Stain could recover, the Shredder closed the distance and kicked him in the ribs, lifting him off the ground and sending him crashing into the far wall. Stain hit the wall. Hard. Plaster cracked. Dust billowed. He slid to the floor, gasping. The Shredder walked toward him. Stain scrambled for his thrown knives, the ones embedded in the wall. He pulled one free. Came up swinging. Desperate now. Wild. The discipline was cracking under the pressure. The Shredder caught the strike. Both hands on Stain's wrist, the gauntlet blades framing the hero killer's arm like a cage. He twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. He drove Stain face first into the wall, pinning him, one armored hand on the back of his neck. Stain thrashed. His body was all wire and sinew and rage, and he fought the hold with everything he had. It wasn't enough. The Shredder was stronger. The armor was heavier. The leverage was absolute. Enough, the Shredder said. Stain kept struggling. His fingernails scraped the wall. His breathing was ragged. Enough. The word hit the room like a dropped weight. Stain went still. His body kept the tension, every muscle coiled, ready to explode, but his mind heard the command, and something in the tone, something in the absolute finality of it, made him stop. The Shredder held the pin for 5 more seconds. Then he released it. He stepped back. He stood over Stain with his arms at his sides, blades retracted, watching. Stain turned, slowly. He sat against the wall, blood running from a cut above his eye, one arm cradling his broken ribs. He looked up at the Shredder. "You could have killed me," Stain said. "Yes." "Why didn't you?" "Because you are not my enemy. You are an obstacle. Obstacles can be removed without being destroyed. Generous of you. Practical. Your ideology is wrong, but your skills are real. Killing you wastes the skills without changing the ideology. Others will inherit your beliefs. Others will take up your blades. The hero killer is a role, not a person. Kill the person, the role survives." Stain stared. His flat eyes were unreadable. "I am giving you a choice," the Shredder said. "Stand down. Walk away from this campaign. Stop targeting heroes near Mirko. Stop using her name in your messages. She is not your symbol. She is not your last hope. She is a person who has made a choice, and you will respect that choice, or I will make this conversation much less civilized. And if I refuse, then you become an obstacle I cannot move, and obstacles I cannot move, I break." Silence. The building creaked around them. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded. Stain looked at the Shredder for a long time. At the armor, at the scars on the face he'd glimpsed when the helmet shifted during the fight, at the green eyes that held no doubt, no hesitation, no mercy, but also no malice. The Shredder wasn't cruel. He was final. He was final. There was a difference. Stain had met many opponents, heroes, villains, people who fell between. He'd beaten most of them. The ones he hadn't beaten had still feared him, because his quirk made fear rational. The Shredder hadn't been afraid. Not for a single moment during the fight. He'd been focused, efficient, controlled. And when Stain's knife had found the gap, when the blade had drawn blood and the quirk had been one taste away from victory, the Shredder had simply adapted, faster and harder than Stain could counter. This was someone Stain could not beat. The admission was bitter. It sat in his mouth like ashes. "Fine," Stain said. He didn't promise. He didn't swear. He said fine. And that was it. But Stain was many things. Killer, zealot, fanatic, and a liar was not one of them. The Shredder looked at him. Read the word. Measured it against everything he knew about the man who said it. He nodded. Once. He turned and walked out of the building. The night swallowed him. His footsteps faded. Stain sat against the wall for a long time. The blood dried on his face. The ribs ached. The building was silent. He did not pick up his blades when he left. The hero killings stopped. 3 weeks passed. The Foot Clan's network was rebuilding. The Shredder was building. Mirko was hitting press circuits, speaking the truth, using her voice like a weapon the same way she used her legs. Mina was running operations with the kind of relentless energy that made the Foot Clan soldiers both adore and fear her. Kurai was growing, learning, asking questions that got sharper every day, and then the world exploded. The leak came on a Monday morning, 8:47 a.m. A media outlet, a mid-tier investigative journalism platform that had made its reputation on hero system exposés during the Commission's fall, published a story. The headline, "The Shredder Unmasked?" DNA evidence links Japan's most wanted to missing middle school student. The story contained the DNA analysis. The blood from the USJ, specifically the blood from the Shredder's gauntlet, recovered from the wall where it had been scraped during the fight with Shigaraki. The blood had been matched against the national DNA database. The match, Izuku Midoriya. Missing person. Last seen at age 10. Mother deceased. Father listed as Hisashi Midoriya, no known address. The story contained the school photograph. Izuku Midoriya at age 9. Small, green-haired, big eyes, the kind of face that belonged on a missing child poster, which it had been for 2 years before the case went cold. The story contained the timeline. Izuku's disappearance, the Shredder's first known appearance, the age progression, all of it aligned. The journalist had done real work. The evidence was circumstantial, but the circumstantial pile was enormous, and the journalist had laid it out with the kind of devastating clarity that turns speculation into certainty in the public mind. By 9:15 a.m., every major news network in Japan was running the story. By 10 a.m., it was international. By noon, the internet had fractured into 1,000 arguments about the Shredder's identity, the hero system's failures, the implications of a quirkless boy. Because the registry still had him listed as Quirkless, the telekinesis had never been officially documented, becoming the most feared person in the country. The Shredder watched the coverage from his command facility. The screens showed the news feeds, the social media firestorm, the press conferences hastily assembled by government officials and hero agencies. His face, his real face, the school photograph, was on every screen. Mina stood beside him. Her expression was tight. "All for one," she said. Yes, he leaked it. Through intermediaries, the journalist's sources will trace back to shell organizations connected to the same financial architecture we identified in the envelope trail. He couldn't flush me out privately. He's trying to do it publicly. It's working. The Shredder didn't respond to that. He watched the screens. He watched the world learn his name. The government moved fast. Within 24 hours, the Hero Public Safety Commission's surviving elements, the caretaker administration that had been running things since the old leadership fell, convened an emergency session. The topic, the Shredder Protocol, the formal apparatus cranked to life. Investigators, analysts, legal specialists. But the real teeth of the protocol were the heroes. The best remaining combatants in the professional hero system assembled into a task force with a single mission. Find and capture the Shredder. Eraserhead led the combat element. Shota Aizawa had been waiting for this moment for years. Since the USJ, when an armored figure had walked through a door and dismantled the League of Villains in front of his students. Since the Commission assault, when he'd stood in the rubble and read a note that said, "You're welcome." Since every late night spent analyzing footage, building profiles, mapping patterns, a career of investigation compressed into an obsession that his colleagues worried about and his students pretended not to notice. He'd always known the Shredder was young. The build, the posture, the energy signature that present Mike's audio analysis had flagged. The Shredder's voice, when processed through frequency decomposition, showed patterns consistent with a speaker under 20. Aizawa had narrowed the age range. The DNA confirmation closed the case, Izuku Midoriya. Quirkless student, missing at 10, the Shredder at 12. Currently 20 years old, if the timeline held, Aizawa didn't hate the Shredder. He didn't feel the righteous fury that the Commission officials spat at press conferences. He felt something worse. He felt responsibility. Because Izuku Midoriya had been a child in a system that Aizawa served, and that system had let him disappear. Had let his mother die. had created the conditions for a frightened boy to crawl into the dark and come out as something the world couldn't contain. Aizawa would bring him in, because bringing him in was the right thing to do, and Aizawa had dedicated his life to doing the right thing even when the right thing was ugly. The task force assembled. Recovery Girl provided medical analysis, quirk factor assessment, biological limitations, recovery predictions. Present Mike handled reconnaissance. His quirk, when modulated to subaudible frequencies, could detect vibrations in building structures that indicated hidden spaces and movement. Midnight was on psychological operations, profiling, negotiation strategy, the human element. Snipe and Ectoplasm provided combat support, and Aizawa led from the front. Because Aizawa always led from the front, they were good, coordinated, professional, and serious. The task force's first coordinated operation hit 3 Foot Clan cells in a single night. Simultaneous raids, timed to the second, designed to squeeze the network and force a response. Cell 1 was a communication hub in Shinjuku. The task force breached at 2 a.m. Aizawa through the front door, capture weapon deployed, eyes wide, erasure active. The 3 Foot Clan operatives inside were good. They fought. One of them had a quirk that generated short-range force fields. Another was a hand-to-hand specialist who gave Aizawa a genuinely difficult 40 seconds before the capture tape found his wrists. Cell 2 was a weapons cache in Yokohama. Present Mike's recon identified the location. Snipe led the breach. The 4 operatives inside surrendered after a brief exchange that cost one of them a shoulder wound from a rubber bullet. Cell 3 was an intelligence post in Chiba. This one was harder. The operatives had better equipment, better training, and a physical layout that favored defense. Ectoplasm deployed clones to overwhelm the entrances. Midnight used her quirk through the ventilation system. The operatives fought through it. Foot Clan soldiers were trained to hold their breath and fight blind, but the task force had numbers and surprise. All 3 cells fell within 90 minutes. 17 Foot Clan operatives in custody. Equipment seized. Data terminals confiscated. The interrogations began immediately. The operatives said nothing. About the Shredder's location, his plans, his movements, his identity, nothing. Aizawa sat across from each of them in turn. He used every technique in the book: pressure, patience, the steady, level gaze that had broken stronger wills than theirs. They stared back, silent, loyal. The Foot Clan's operational security was absolute, but it wasn't just policy. These people believed. They believed in the Shredder the way the public used to believe in All Might, with the fervent, unshakable certainty of people who had been saved by a person they trusted with their lives. Aizawa came out of the last interrogation at 5 a.m., rubbing his eyes, exhaustion pulling at every muscle in his face. "Nothing," he said to Present Mike. "They know nothing about his location. The cell structure is too compartmented. Each unit operates on local intelligence. They don't know anything above their own level." "So we keep squeezing," Present Mike said. "We keep squeezing." They didn't keep squeezing for long, because Mina Ashido hit them back. She found out about the raids within an hour of their execution. The Foot Clan's distributed communication network ensured that information traveled fast, even when individual cells were compromised. She assessed the situation. 17 operatives captured, 3 facilities blown, equipment and data in government hands. She went to the Shredder. He was in the fabrication lab, hands deep in a new communications array. 3 cells, she said. Simultaneous. Professional. They knew our locations. The task force has better intelligence than expected. Someone is feeding them. Yes, the Shredder didn't look up from his work. Someone outside our network, someone who knows enough about our structure to identify cell locations but not enough to find the central facilities. That narrows the source. All for one, through intermediaries. He's using the task force as a weapon. He feeds them just enough to keep them hitting us while he prepares whatever his real play is. Mina's jaw tightened. "I want to hit back. Then hit back. All 3 cells. Tonight. Extract our people. Destroy the evidence they've gathered. Make a statement." Mina's grin was sharp, dangerous. The pink death looking out through the eyes of the girl who used to cry alone in her dorm room. "Alone?" she asked. "Alone." "Good." Mina moved at midnight. She hit the first facility, the government holding center in Shinjuku, where Cell 1's operatives were being held. At 12, The building was a repurposed office complex, 4 stories, guarded by a combination of police and hero agency security. 15 personnel, staggered patrols, electronic surveillance on every door and window. Mina came through the parking garage. Her approach was silent. Bare feet on concrete, the acid-resistant soles of her Foot-Clan bodysuit absorbing every sound. She moved in the ginga, the capoeira base step, her body rocking side to side in a rhythm that kept her muscles warm and her balance centered. The first guard was at the garage stairwell door. He turned at the last second, heard something, maybe, or felt the shift in the air. He saw her. Pink skin, gold eyes, the Foot Clan's emblem on her shoulder. He reached for his radio. Mina's Armada, a spinning capoeira kick, heel striking the radio out of his hand, the follow-through carrying her body into a full rotation, took out his radio, his footing, and his confidence in one movement. Acid coated her heel. The radio dissolved in midair. The guard hit the floor. She dropped an elbow on his temple before he could shout. He went still. She moved upstairs. Each floor was a dance. The ginga carrying her through corridors, her feet leaving thin trails of acid on the tile that ate through the boots of anyone who tried to follow. She hit guards with kicks that left acid burns through their body armor. She cartwheeled over barricades. She dropped from ceilings onto people who were looking the wrong direction. Mea Lua di Compasso, the spinning heel kick, took down 2 guards at once, the acid from her foot spraying in an arc that cleared a hallway in a single movement. She reached the holding cells on the 3rd floor in 8 minutes. The door was reinforced steel. She put her palm against it and pushed acid through, concentrated, industrial strength, the kind that ate through metal in seconds. The lock melted. The hinges dissolved. The door fell inward. The 3 Foot Clan operatives were on their feet. They'd heard the fighting. They were ready. "Let's go," Mina said. They went. The second facility, Yokohama, fell at 12:31 a.m. Mina arrived by car, a nondescript sedan from the Foot Clan's vehicle pool, and hit the building from the roof. She acid melted through the roof access, dropped into the top floor, and danced down through 4 levels of security, like gravity was optional, and pain was something that happened to other people. The hero who'd been assigned to guard the facility, a mid-rank combat hero with a reinforcement quirk, met her on the 2nd floor. He was big, armored, confident. He'd heard about the Pink Death on the news and decided it was hype. Mina hit him with a ginga into Queixada, a crescent kick that started low and whipped upward, coating his faceplate in acid. He clawed at his helmet. The acid ate through the visor. He ripped the helmet off, eyes watering, and Mina planted a front kick in his solar plexus that lifted him off his feet and sent him crashing through a partition wall. He didn't get up. She freed the 4 operatives and destroyed the evidence. 2 data terminals and a box of seized equipment, all dissolved to slag with a concentrated acid wash that left nothing but puddles of corrosive liquid on the floor. The 3rd facility, Chiba, fell at 12:48 a.m. This one was harder. Ectoplasm was on site, one of the task force's heaviest hitters, his clone quirk allowing him to fight in multiple locations simultaneously. Mina arrived to find 6 ectoplasm clones guarding the perimeter, each one a capable fighter. She went through them. Clone 1 caught a Mea Lua that dissolved his legs at the knee. He collapsed and flickered out. Clone 2 tried to grab her. She backflipped over his reaching arms, landed behind him, and kicked him in the spine. Acid ate through his back. He vanished. Clone 3 and 4 came together. She danced between them, every step leaving acid, every movement forcing them to adjust their footing on dissolving ground. They slipped. They fell. She finished them with a double heel strike that was more ballet than combat. Clone 5 was smarter. He hung back. Let her come to him. She feinted a charge and instead dropped, sliding across the acid-slick floor like a baseball player stealing home, and kicked his feet out from under him as she passed. He went down. She was on him before he hit the ground. Clone 6 was the real threat. This one was closer to the original, more durable, more coordinated, armed with a prosthetic blade that he wielded with the cold skill of a man who'd been a hero for decades. He and Mina fought for 45 seconds. A real fight, give and take, his blade against her acid, his experience against her speed. She won because she danced, and he didn't. The ginga kept her in constant motion. Every step was a feint, Every fight was a potential attack. Every attack left acid. The floor became a trap. His footing went. Her heel caught his jaw. The clone dissolved. The real ectoplasm was deeper inside the building, guarding the holding cells directly. Mina found him in a corridor. The original, solid, watching her with the expression of a man who knew he was outmatched and was going to fight anyway. "Stand down," Mina said. She was breathing hard. Sweat and acid misted from her skin. Her gold eyes were bright in the fluorescent light. "I can't do that," Ectoplasm said. "I know," Mina said, "but I had to offer." She moved. He moved. The fight lasted 12 seconds. Ectoplasm was tough, experienced, and capable. Mina was faster, more creative, and covered in a substance that destroyed everything it touched. She took a hit. His prosthetic blade caught her across the forearm, leaving a cut that bled pink, and she gave back 3. A kick to his ribs, a palm strike to his jaw, a spinning back kick that left a handprint of acid across his chest plate. Ectoplasm hit the floor, conscious, breathing. Out of the fight, Mina stepped over him. "Sorry," she said, and meant it. She freed the operatives, destroyed the evidence, left through the roof. 3 facilities, 40 minutes, 17 operatives extracted, all evidence destroyed. The task force's entire first operation undone in less than an hour by a single person. The footage circulated by morning. Security cameras that Mina hadn't had time to disable had caught fragments. A pink figure spinning through corridors, dissolving guards, doors. The footage was grainy, partial, and absolutely electrifying. The internet went insane. The Pink Death. Real. Verified. On camera, someone on a fan forum posted a 3-second clip of Mina backflipping over a guard and captioned it, "She's just vibing." It got 40 million views in 2 days. Mina found out from a Foot Clan operative who showed her the clip on his phone. She stared at it. Then she sent the shredder a voice message that was 30 seconds of her laughing, helpless, genuine, the sound of someone who was having the time of her life in the middle of a shadow war. The shredder listened to the message in his command facility. Kurai was asleep on the couch beside him. Mirko was reviewing the task force's communications intercepts on a tablet across the room. His mouth twitched. He saved the message. The task force escalated. Aizawa drove them harder. More raids, more surveillance, tighter coordination. They mapped 3 more Foot Clan cell locations. They intercepted communications. They built a picture of the network that was incomplete but growing, and Aizawa made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. He reached out to the criminal underworld through intermediaries, through channels that the task force's intelligence officers had cultivated over months. He was looking for informants, anyone inside the villain ecosystem who might have information about the Shredder's operations, his movements, his vulnerabilities. The intermediaries connected him to a source, clean, professional, well-informed. The source provided intelligence that was good, verifiably good, cross-referenced against the task force's existing data, accurate in ways that random information never was. The source was all for ones. Aizawa didn't know. He couldn't have known. The intermediary chain was 7 layers deep, each layer insulated, each connection plausibly deniable. All for One had been building networks like this since before Aizawa's grandparents were born. The manipulation was invisible. The intelligence pointed to a location. The Shredder's new central operations hub, the primary facility in the distributed network, the one that housed the command center, the fabrication lab, and the Shredder himself. Aizawa verified the intelligence 3 different ways. It checked out every time. The location made sense. An industrial complex on the outskirts of Tokyo, recently acquired through a shell company, power consumption consistent with heavy equipment, thermal signatures indicating occupancy. He planned the operation. Full task force deployment, every available hero. Coordinated breach, overwhelming force, 0 margin for error. He set the date. He set the time. He did not know that All for One had set them too. All for One's plan was beautiful in its cruelty. Let the task force find the Shredder. Let them move in. Let the battle begin. Government forces against the Foot Clan, heroes against soldiers, the legitimate world against the Shadow Empire. While both sides bled All for One's own force, 50 quirk-enhanced soldiers, trained in secret over decades, armed and ready, would move in behind the task force. They would eliminate Aizawa's team, destroy the Foot Clan's leadership, and pin the carnage on the Shredder. When the smoke cleared, All for One would be the only power left standing. The hero world and the Foot Clan would have destroyed each other. The void would be his. It was the plan of a man who'd been playing chess for 100 years. And it would have worked. Except for Kurai. The girl was 10 years old and sharp as a blade. She had been quietly, without telling anyone, because Kurai had inherited her father's instinct for independent action, working with the salvaged Utrom surveillance fragments. The bioextraction tools, the quirk analysis systems, the communication intercepts, the fragments that had survived the cavern's destruction, included pieces of the monitoring network that had once given the Foot Clan total awareness of the city's electronic communications. The fragments were damaged, partial. Their range was limited and their resolution was poor. But Kurai had been studying them for weeks, learning their interface through trial and error, and she'd found a thread. A transmission thread, encrypted, routed through 7 intermediary nodes. The same architecture as the financial trail Mina had traced from the envelope. The same signatures, the same patterns, the same fingerprints of a mind that had been building hidden networks for decades. The thread connected All for One's communications network to the task force's intelligence feeds. And the most recent transmission on the thread, dated 4 hours ago, contained a set of coordinates, a timeline, and a force disposition that described exactly what All for One planned to do when the task force moved on the Shredder's base. Kurai brought the data to her father on a tablet. She walked into the command center at 2 a.m., bare feet on the metal floor, and put the tablet in front of him. "Dad," she said, "look at this." The Shredder looked. He read the transmission. He read the coordinates. He read the timeline. 4 hours. The task force would move in 4 hours. All for One's soldiers would follow them in. Both forces would converge on this location, the place where Kurai slept, where Mina worked, where the Foot Clan's heart still beat. He looked at his daughter. She was sitting in the chair across from him, her small feet not quite reaching the floor. Her red eyes were steady. Her white hair was mussed from sleep. She'd been up all night working on this. "Good work," he said. Just that. But Kurai heard what lived underneath the words, the pride, the gratitude, the fierce and overwhelming love of a father whose daughter had just saved everything he'd built. She smiled. "So what do? We move." 4 hours. The Shredder used every minute. The first hour was evacuation. The base emptied. Personnel, equipment, data, everything critical was moved to secondary facilities across the city. Mina coordinated the logistics with the efficiency of someone who had been running a shadow government's operations for years. The soldiers moved fast, quiet, drilled for exactly this scenario. Kurai went with the first transport, surrounded by guards. The Shredder watched her go. She looked back once, through the window of the vehicle, and waved. He raised his hand, just for a moment. Then the vehicle was gone. The second hour was preparation. The base was emptied of everything valuable and loaded with everything dangerous. Traps, disorientation systems, smoke generators, EMP devices. The Shredder turned the facility from a home into a killing floor. The third hour was positioning. Foot Clan combat squads, 30 soldiers, the best he had, were deployed around the perimeter. Hidden, dispersed. Their orders were specific. Engage All for One's forces when they arrive, not the task force. The task force was to be contained, disoriented, and allowed to survive. The fourth hour was the Shredder alone. He stood in the command center of the emptied base. Full armor, new armor, the hybrid alloy, the rebuilt helmet, the blades sharper than the originals. He ran his hands across the console one last time. The screens were dark, the room was quiet. He was not thinking about the fight. He was thinking about the cavern, the first one, the one he'd fallen into at age 10, the one where a dead alien's ghost had told him he was worthy. He was thinking about his mother, about the photograph in the envelope. Inko, at 26, laughing, holding an ice cream cone, alive in a way that the world had beaten out of her. He was thinking about what she would say if she could see him now. He closed his eyes. 1 breath. 2. Then he opened them, green behind red. The boy and the conqueror, the same person, the same eyes. "Come and get it," he said. To no one. To everyone. The task force breached at 6 a.m. Aizawa led the assault. He came through the east entrance, erasure active, capture weapon extended, his body low and fast. Behind him, Present Mike, Snipe, Midnight, 6 combat support heroes, A full tactical squad. The facility was dark. The lights had been killed. The air was thick with a haze that might have been smoke or might have been something worse. Present Mike's voice reached out, sub-audible frequencies probing the building's structure, reading the vibrations. "It's empty," he said. "Mostly. I'm getting one signature. Central area. Big." "Trap?" Aizawa asked. "Almost certainly." "We go anyway." They went. The first trap hit at the second corridor junction, a wall of smoke, dense, disorienting, spiked with something that scrambled visual perception. The heroes stumbled. Midnight's gas mask protected her. The others weren't as ready. Present Mike fired a directional voice blast that cleared the smoke from their immediate area, but it reformed behind them. They were in a tunnel of haze. The second trap hit 30 feet further in. Further in. EMP burst. Every electronic device in the squad, radios, tracking systems, quirk enhancement gear, died. The hero with the night vision quirk lost his amplification visor. They were in the dark. Aizawa kept moving. He didn't need electronics. He needed his eyes and his weapon and the bone-deep instinct of a man who had been fighting in the dark since before these heroes had their licenses. They reached the central area, the command center. The door was open. The shredder stood inside, lit by a single emergency light. Red eyes burning in the dark, blades out, waiting. Aizawa stopped. His capture weapon tightened in his hands. "Midoriya," he said. "That name is dead. Then I'm addressing whatever's left of it. You're surrounded. The building is contained. There's nowhere to go. You are standing in a building I prepared for you. You are exactly where I want you to be, and you are about to have a much bigger problem than me." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. His erasure was active, locked on the shredder, suppressing the telekinetic quirk, but the shredder didn't seem concerned. He stood with his blades out and his posture relaxed, like a man waiting for a bus. Then the explosions started. Outside, multiple detonations. The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The heroes spun. Present Mike's voice went up, reflex, defensive, and through the walls, muffled but unmistakable, the sound of combat. Heavy combat. Energy blasts. Screaming. The distinctive wet crunch of bodies hitting concrete. What? Present Mike started. "All for one soldiers," the shredder said. 50 of them. Quirk enhanced. They followed you here. They were supposed to wait until you were committed inside and then close the trap. Kill your team, kill mine. Pin the bodies on the Foot Clan. Aizawa's face went white. The blood drained out of it like someone had opened a valve. He understood immediately. The intelligence, the source, the informant chain that had been too good to be true, he'd been played. "You knew," Aizawa said. "I know everything that happens in this city. I have known for 4 hours. Your team is inside a building full of traps they haven't triggered yet. Outside, 50 trained killers are about to breach the perimeter. You have approximately 90 seconds before they reach the building." Aizawa's jaw clenched. His body was coiled. Every instinct told him to attack the shredder, to take down the target, to complete the mission. But the mission was a lie. The target had known it was a lie, and the real enemy was outside. "Why are you telling me this?" Aizawa asked. The shredder looked at him. Behind the faceplate, behind the red lenses, behind the armor and the blades and the empire, something looked back. Something that remembered a teacher's name on a classroom roster. Something that understood the difference between an enemy and an honest man. "Because you are not my enemy," the shredder said. "You never have been. You are the only person in the hero system who still does the job for the right reasons. I will not repay that by letting you die in someone else's trap." A beat. 2 heartbeats. "Your team takes the east wing. My soldiers are outside. They will engage All for One's force from the west. We hold the building. We survive the night, and when it is over, you and I have a different conversation." Aizawa stared at the shredder. The capture weapon trembled in his grip. Every protocol, every regulation, every rule said to take the shot. The target was right there, in range. Erasure active. One throw of the weapon and it was over. The building shook again, closer this time. A wall somewhere collapsed with a roar of breaking concrete. Someone screamed. One of the support heroes outside caught in the first wave. Aizawa made his choice. "East wing," he said to his team. "Move, now." Present Mike opened his mouth to argue. Midnight grabbed his arm. "Later," she said. "Fight now." The task force moved, east wing, through the corridors, into position. The shredder went west. What followed was a war. All for One's soldiers breached the perimeter at 6:04 a.m. 50 of them, armored, armed, each one carrying at least 2 quirks implanted through the same kind of stolen biology techniques that had created the Nomu. They hit the building from 3 directions. They were fast, professional, and absolutely ruthless. They met the Foot Clan's combat squads at the western perimeter, 30 Foot Clan soldiers against 50 quirk-enhanced killers. The math was bad. The Foot Clan made up the difference with training, positioning, and the kind of fanatical loyalty that turned every soldier into a wall. The fighting was brutal, close quarters. The Foot Clan soldiers used the building's layout, choke points, blind corners, elevated positions, to negate the enemy's numerical advantage. They fought in pairs, covering each other, rotating wounded soldiers to the rear, maintaining discipline under fire. Mina was there. She appeared from nowhere, or seemed to. One moment, the Foot Clan's western line was buckling under pressure from a squad of 8 quirk-enhanced attackers. The next, a pink figure cartwheeled into the middle of the enemy formation, acid spraying from every limb, and the formation shattered. She fought 3 of them at once. Jinga, Okashada. The capoeira rhythm carried her between and around them, each movement leaving acid, each kick burning through armor. One went down with a melted chest plate and acid burns across his face. Another slipped on the acid-slicked floor and caught a heel to the temple. The third managed to land a hit, a quirk-enhanced fist to her ribs that sent her skidding. And she came back with a spinning back kick that left a burning handprint on his throat. She was everywhere. The pink death, dancing through the fire, laughing because she couldn't help it. Because fighting like this, free, unleashed, dangerous, was the only thing that had ever made sense. On the east side, Aizawa's team held. Barely. All for One's soldiers hit the east wing in a wave of quirk fire and brute force. Present Mike's voice blasts cleared corridors but couldn't hold ground. Snipe picked off targets from elevated positions but ran low on ammunition. Midnight's quirk caught some of them. The gas drifting through the corridors, putting soldiers to sleep. But the gas masks on All for One's troops were better than expected. Aizawa fought in the middle of it. Erasure active, capture weapon flying, his body burning through its reserves at a rate that would leave him useless within 20 minutes. He moved through the corridors the way he always moved. Fast, low, using terrain and timing instead of raw power. He disabled 4 enemy soldiers in the first 3 minutes. His capture weapon found throats, wrists, ankles, binding them, slamming them into walls, taking them out of the fight. It wasn't enough. The enemy kept coming. Aizawa's team was being pushed back, and then the shredder hit the enemy from behind. He came through the wall, the actual wall. His gauntlet blades carved a hole in the interior partition, and he stepped through it into the corridor behind the enemy assault group that was pressing Aizawa's team. 8 soldiers, all facing the wrong direction, all focused on the fight in front of them. The shredder went through them like a blade through cloth. The first one caught a kick to the spine that sent him face first into the wall. The second turned and took a gauntlet blade across the forearm. Not a killing blow, a disabling one, the tendons severed clean. The third fired a quirk, some kind of energy blast, and the shredder tilted his head 2 inches to the left. The blast passed his ear and blew a hole in the wall behind him. He closed the distance in 1 step and drove his knee into the man's stomach, folding him. The remaining 5 turned. All of them. All at once. Quirks flaring, weapons raised, the combined force of a half-dozen stolen abilities focused on a single target. The shredder pulled every piece of metal on their bodies, armor plating, weapons, belt hardware, the implanted metal frameworks that All for One's surgery had used to anchor the quirks, lurched. The soldiers staggered. The ones with more metal implants went to their knees. The shredder moved through the gap, striking, cutting, hitting, each blow aimed at the joints where flesh met implanted metal, where the armor was weakest, where the pain was sharpest. 8 soldiers, 15 seconds, all down. Aizawa watched from behind his capture weapon. His face was unreadable. The shredder stood in the corridor with 8 bodies at his feet, armor splashed with blood that wasn't his, blades gleaming. Their eyes met. Hero and nightmare. Teacher and ghost of a student he'd never had. The shredder nodded. Once. Then he turned and went back toward the west. The battle raged for 37 minutes. The longest 37 minutes of anyone's life. The building was a ruin by the end. Walls shattered, corridors collapsed, fire and smoke, and the stink of blood and ozone filling every space. All for One soldiers died hard. They were engineered to fight, to endure, to keep going when normal humans would drop. But the Foot Clan fought harder. And the task force, fighting for survival instead of a mission briefing, fought hardest of all. When it was over, when the last of All for One soldiers was down, unconscious or worse, the survivors gathered in the building's central courtyard. The roof was gone. The morning sky was pale blue above them. Smoke rose in columns. Foot Clan soldiers on one side, task force heroes on the other. Both sides battered, both sides bleeding. An impossible ceasefire in an impossible place. And standing between them, alone in the open space, the Shredder. He was hurt. The armor was damaged, new cracks joining the old ones, one shoulder blade snapped off entirely, the left gauntlet dripping blood from a cut beneath the plating. His helmet's right eye lens was shattered. One green eye showed through the gap. He looked at Aizawa. He looked at the task force. He looked at his own soldiers. Then he looked past all of them. At the far end of the courtyard, where a figure stood in the dust, emerging from the smoke like something rising from a grave, All for One he had come personally. The plan had failed. His soldiers were beaten, the trap was broken, but All for One was not the kind of man who accepted failure from a distance. He was here, in the flesh. Full power, he looked worse than the last time. The fight in the cavern had left marks that even stacked regeneration couldn't fully erase. New scars crossed the old ones. His posture was different, favoring the leg the Shredder had cut, but his quirks were active, all of them. The air around him vibrated with stolen power. "Stubborn boy," All for One said. His voice carried across the courtyard, warm, paternal, chilling. "You could have had everything." The Shredder reached up and removed his helmet. The cracked, battered thing came away in his hands. He looked at it, at the red eyes that had been his face for 8 years, at the symbol the world feared. He set it on the ground. Underneath, Izuku Midoriya, 20 years old, green hair matted with sweat and dust, green eyes that burned in the morning light, scars across his jaw, his temple, his cheekbones, the map of a decade of violence. He was young. He was tired. He was absolutely certain. "You could never give me what I have," Izuku said, "because you don't understand what I built. You think it's an empire. You think it's power. It's not. It's a family, and you don't know what that word means." All for One laughed. The sound was hollow, ancient. Family. The man in the armor, talking about family. "Your mother is dead, Izuku. Your family is a corpse and a memory. My mother is dead because of you. But my family is alive. My family is the girl who calls me dad, the woman who fights beside me, the soldier who dances through fire, the people who chose me, not because I am strong, but because I built something worth choosing." He drew his gauntlet blades. The Utrom alloy caught the dawn light and gleamed. "You are nothing but hunger, a century of stealing from others because you could never build anything of your own. You are the empty space at the center of your own empire, and today I fill it." All for One stopped laughing. The stolen quirk surged. The air crackled. The ground trembled. "Then come, son," he said. "Come and try." Izuku came. He crossed the courtyard in a blur, not the measured walk of the Shredder, but a sprint, raw and fast, his body powered by 8 years of training and a rage that had been building since the day he read his mother's death summary on a kitchen counter. His blades led the way. His quirk reached out ahead of him, feeling every piece of metal in the courtyard and in the building, the rubble. All for One fired. Air cannon, a blast of compressed atmosphere that could level a building. The column of force screamed across the courtyard. Izuku slid under it. Flat to the ground, momentum carrying him, the blast passing 6 inches above his back. He came up without breaking stride and closed the distance. All for One stacked 3 quirks: kinetic amplification, strength enhancement, impact resistance, and threw a punch that would have killed an elephant. Izuku sidestepped. The fist passed his face close enough to ruffle his hair. He drove his right blade into All for One's ribs. The hardened skin quirk caught the blade. The edge sank an inch. The Utrom alloy cutting through the enhancement, but stopped at the bone. Izuku twisted. All for One grunted and swung his other arm, a backhand enhanced by 3 strength quirks. Izuku pulled. Every piece of metal in a 10-meter radius answered. Shrapnel, rebar, fragments of destroyed armor, all of it screaming toward All for One from behind. The old villain sensed it, his extrasensory quirks painting the incoming barrage, and threw up a barrier. The metal hit the barrier. It held. But the impact forced All for One to divide his attention. Barrier behind, Shredder in front. And in that split second, Izuku ripped his blade free and drove it into All for One's shoulder. The same shoulder he'd wounded in the cavern. The same wound, reopened. All for One screamed. The sound was more rage than pain. He detonated, the same full-body shockwave he'd used in the cavern, and Izuku was blown backward, tumbling across the courtyard, his armor scraping concrete. He was on his feet instantly. Blood ran from his nose. His vision swam. He ignored both. All for One charged. Speed quirk, strength, quirk, impact quirk, a combination that turned the ancient villain into a missile. He covered 30 feet in less than a second. His fist came down like a hammer, aimed at Izuku's skull. Izuku twisted. The fist hit the ground beside him. The concrete exploded, a crater 3 feet deep. Izuku planted his foot on All for One's extended arm and ran up it. Up the arm, up the shoulder, launching himself off the top of All for One's body in a move that was part parkour, part combat instinct, and wholly insane. At the apex, he pulled himself toward a piece of rebar embedded in the wall behind All for One. His body shot backward like a slingshot. He came down on All for One's back, blades first, both gauntlets driving into the meat of the trapezius muscles, the alien edge cutting through hardened skin, through muscle, finding the spine. All for One thrashed. His hand reached back, grabbed Izuku by the arm, and threw him. Izuku flew 30 feet and hit a wall. The impact cracked his chest plate, the new armor, the one he'd built with his own hands, and something in his ribs shifted wrong. He got up. Because Izuku Midoriya always got up, they fought in the rubble. Back and forth. Devastating. All for One poured quirks into every attack. Fire, force, electricity, spatial distortion, gravity manipulation. The courtyard became a war zone. The ground split. The walls fell. The task force and the Foot Clan soldiers retreated to the perimeter, watching in helpless awe as two forces of nature tried to kill each other. Izuku took hits. A force blast that cracked his left arm's armor and left the limb numb. An electrical discharge that overloaded his nervous system for 2 agonizing seconds. A gravity pulse that pinned him to the ground while All for One stomped on his chest, trying to crush the armor, trying to reach the body inside. Izuku gave back worse. His blades found All for One's body again and again, the ribs, the thigh, the forearms, the shoulder. Each cut deeper than the last. The regeneration quirks worked overtime, stitching wounds closed even as new ones opened, but the healing was slower now. The stacked quirks were burning through their reserves. All for One was running out of gas, but he had more gas than anyone alive, and the fight had been going for 6 minutes, and Izuku's body was starting to fail. The ribs were cracked, at least 3, maybe 4. The left arm was barely functional. His vision was spotty, his lungs burned. This is where the endgame began. Izuku reached into the pouch on his hip, the pouch that held one item. One piece of salvaged Utrom technology. The bioextraction tool. It was small. The size of a pen. It had been designed for quirk research, a medical instrument capable of reading and recording biological quirk factors. The Shredder had spent 3 weeks modifying it. Not to read. To extract. To reach into the biological mechanism that housed a quirk and pull it out. Not gently, not painlessly, but completely. He'd built it for this moment, for this fight, for the one weapon that could defeat a man who had spent a century making himself unbeatable. He needed contact, extended contact. 3 seconds of the tool pressed against All for One's skin while the extraction sequence ran. 3 seconds was an eternity in a fight like this. All for One came in again. A flying tackle, strength enhanced, speed boosted, the full weight of his body aimed at crushing Izuku against the rubble. Izuku braced, caught him. The impact drove his feet 6 inches into the concrete. His arms screamed. His cracked ribs howled. He held, grappling, chest to chest. All for One's hands reaching for his neck, trying to activate a decay quirk, a disintegration, something that would end this. Izuku's right hand pressed the bioextraction tool against All for One's bare neck. The tool hummed. The sequence activated. All for One felt it immediately. His eyes, eyeless but perceiving, went wide. He felt the pull. Not the Shredder's telekinetic pull, something deeper. Something that reached into his cells, into his DNA, into the stolen quirks that were woven into his biology like threads in cloth, and started ripping them out. The first quirk left him like a scream. The fire quirk, stolen 40 years ago from a woman whose name he'd forgotten, tore free from his cellular structure and dissipated into nothing. The biological housing collapsed. The neural pathways that had connected it to his brain severed. All for One howled. He thrashed. His hands found Izuku's wrist and squeezed. Strength, quirk, the grip of a man who could crush steel. Izuku's wrist bones ground together, pain beyond anything he'd felt since the cavern. His fingers went numb. He held the tool. He held it because letting go meant losing. Held it because his mother had died for this moment. Held it because Kurai was out there somewhere, safe, waiting for her father to come home. The second quirk went. The air cannon, gone. The third, the kinetic amplification, gone. Each one tearing free like a root being pulled from soil. Violent, agonizing, leaving nothing behind but empty space. All for One's grip weakened. The strength quirks were going, one by one. His body was diminishing, the stolen power draining out of him like water from a cracked vessel. No, All for One gasped. No, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the hardened skin, the regeneration, the speed. Quirk after quirk, decade after decade of theft and accumulation, stripped away in seconds by a device that was never meant for this, but was built by a boy who had lost everything and refused to lose again. All for One's body sagged. His grip failed. His hands slid off Izuku's wrist. He staggered backward, knees buckling, the suit hanging loose on a frame that was suddenly, shockingly diminished. The quirks were gone. Dozens of them. A century of stolen power extracted and destroyed. What was left was All for One's original quirk, the ability to take and give quirks. But without anything to take from, without a target in range carrying a quirk he could steal, it was useless. A hand with nothing to grab, All for One fell to his knees, in the rubble, in the dust. In the morning light that poured through the destroyed roof and painted everything in gold, he was powerless. For the first time in 100 years, he looked up at Izuku, at his son, at the weapon that had refused to be wielded. How? All for One whispered. The voice was thin, old. Stripped of the quirks that had strengthened his vocal cords, he sounded like what he was, a very old, very tired man. Izuku looked down at him. The bio-extraction tool was still in his hand. His wrist was broken. He could feel the bones grating. His ribs were shattered. His vision was gray at the edges. He was standing through will alone. You built me to be your weapon, Izuku said. You forgot that weapons don't care who they're pointed at. He turned away from All for One. He looked at Aizawa, who stood at the edge of the courtyard with his capture weapon in white-knuckled hands and his face a mask of exhaustion and disbelief. Izuku picked up a piece of rubble. He found a nail in the debris, bent, rusted, sharp. He pressed it through a scrap of cloth and scratched 2 words. He dropped the cloth on All for One's lap. Then he walked to his helmet, picked it up, put it on. The cracked faceplate and the shattered lens and the scratched alloy. The face of the Shredder way damaged but unbroken. He walked out of the courtyard, through the ruins, into the morning. His Foot Clan soldiers fell in behind him, those still standing. Mina appeared at his side, bruised, limping, acid burned across one shoulder, grinning. They disappeared. Into the city, into the shadows, into the architecture of a world that was being remade underneath the one everyone else lived in. Aizawa stood in the courtyard for a long time after they left. All for One was on the ground at his feet, the most dangerous villain in Japan's history, powerless, broken, delivered. Aizawa looked at the cloth, the 2 words scratched in a nail's rough hand. You're welcome. He held it. He looked at it. The morning light hit the cloth and the words and his hands, which were shaking. He folded the cloth and put it in his pocket. The task force secured All for One. Medical teams arrived. Government officials, media. The courtyard became a circus of flashing lights and shouted questions and people who wanted to be seen near the biggest arrest in a generation. The official report was creative. The Shredder Protocol was declared a success. The task force, under Eraserhead's leadership, had located and apprehended All for One, following an extended operation. The involvement of the Foot Clan was noted as incidental contact with criminal elements during the operation. The Shredder's direct role in the capture was not mentioned. Nobody asked too many questions. Because asking questions meant getting answers, and the answers were the kind that could end careers, collapse institutions, and rewrite the history of the hero system from the ground up. Nezu watched the news coverage from his office. All for one in custody, restrained, powerless, being loaded into a maximum security transport. The biggest hero news in a generation. He poured himself more tea. He watched the footage with his black eyes, missing nothing. He did not say, "I told you so." He did not say anything at all. He sipped his tea. Class 1A heard about it that evening. They gathered in the common room of the dormitory. Older now, some of them graduated, some still finishing their final year. The television showed the footage on repeat. All for one. Captured. The Shredder Protocol. Success. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when everyone is thinking the same thing and nobody wants to say it. Kirishima sat on the couch. He stared at the wall. His red eyes were distant. He was thinking about the USJ, about a figure at the top of the stairs, about the way the armored boots had rung against the metal like a countdown. Todoroki sat in the armchair by the window. His eyes were closed. His hands were folded in his lap. He was thinking about the commission files, the ones that had exposed his father's ranking manipulation, the ones that had, in a roundabout way, freed him from the shadow of Endeavor's ambition. Yaoyorozu sat at the table. She had put down her tablet and was looking at nothing. Her mind, brilliant, relentless, always running, was quiet for once. She was thinking about a quirk match she'd found in a database 3 years ago. Telekinesis. Small objects, limited range. One match in the entire national registry. Nobody said his name, but everyone was thinking it. Bakugo was there, in the back of the room, leaning against the wall. His arms, scarred, weaker than they used to be, the nitroglycerin glands permanently diminished, were crossed over his chest. His face was unreadable. The explosion that had ended his career as a top-tier hero had also ended something else. The bottomless, burning certainty that he was the strongest, the best, the one who would stand at the top. He looked at the television, at the footage, at the task force's official statement, which credited the capture to heroes who had been saved by the person they were hunting. His mouth moved, silent. Nobody heard what he said. Maybe it was a name, maybe it was a curse, maybe it was the first honest word Katsuki Bakugo had ever spoken about the boy he used to chase through parks. The room was quiet. The television played. The night settled over UA like a blanket over children who had grown up too fast and understood too much. Somewhere in the city, a new location, undisclosed, impregnable, the Shredder sat at a table, not the armor bay, not the command console, not the throne of an empire or the seat of a shadow government, just a table, simple, wooden. The kind of table a family eats dinner at. His armor was on the maintenance rack across the room. The cracked chest plate, the shattered lens, the missing shoulder blade. It would be repaired. It would be rebuilt. It always was. He was wearing civilian clothes, black shirt, black pants, no logos, the kind of thing a ghost would wear. His wrist was splinted. Mina had set the bones with the kind of field medic efficiency the Foot Clan taught all its operatives. His ribs were wrapped. His face was bruised. He was alive. Kurai was across from him at the table. She was working on something with her hands, a model of the original cavern, built from memory and Mina's descriptions and the Utrum schematics she'd found in the salvage data cores. It was painstaking work for a 10-year-old. The angles kept coming out wrong. The entrance tunnel was too wide. The central console was too small. She kept getting it wrong and starting over, her small hands patient, her red eyes focused. Mirko sat next to him. Her legs were up on a second chair, bare, scarred, the most dangerous weapons in Japan currently propped on furniture like they belonged there. She was reading something on a tablet, intelligence reports, probably, or the news coverage, which she found alternately infuriating and hilarious. She was not in hero gear. She was not in Foot Clan gear. She was in a tank top and shorts, and she was just herself. Rumi Usagiyama, the woman who had kicked through a wall to fight him and taken his hand on a rooftop and never once looked back. She was warm, real, present in a way that had nothing to do with power or rank or the shape of the world. She was just there, beside him, reading her tablet, her shoulder touching his when she shifted her weight. He let her touch. He leaned into it, just barely, just enough. Mina came in from the corridor. She dropped into a chair with the boneless grace of someone who was simultaneously exhausted and vibrating with energy. She put her feet on the table. Acid-free, she'd showered, her skin pink and clean, her gold eyes bright. 3 new districts have requested Foot Clan community protection coverage, she said. Minato, Nakano, and Setagaya. That brings us to 14 total. The waiting list for the civilian defense program is now longer than the hero agency enrollment lists for the same areas. And someone on the internet started a fan account for the Pink Death. She paused for effect. They have 40,000 followers. Accept the district requests, the Shredder said. His voice was quiet. The cold was still there. It would always be there, but softened. Ground down to something that sounded less like a blade and more like a person. Tell the civilian program to scale up. We'll need 6 more trainers and a second facility in the Nakano area. On it. And find out who runs that account. Mina raised an eyebrow. Find out so you can shut it down? Find out so you can send them something nice. Mina blinked. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Then she laughed. Full, bright, the kind of laugh that filled rooms and made people wonder what the joke was. The kind of laugh that had once died in a dorm room and been reborn in a cavern and was now loud enough to shake the walls. You're getting soft, boss, she said. I am not. You totally are. Kurai, your dad's getting soft. From across the table, Kurai looked up from her model. He's not soft, he's efficient. Positive community engagement increases loyalty metrics by... Oh my god, she sounds like you, Mina said to the Shredder. She actually sounds like you. This is terrifying. Kurai grinned. Mina grinned back. Mirko's mouth twitched behind her tablet. The room was warm. The table was real. The people around it were alive and whole and together in a way that none of them had been before they'd found each other. The conqueror, the fighter, the dancer, the princess. A family forged in shadows and held together by something stronger than blood. Kurai looked up from her model again. Her expression shifted, from playful to serious, the way children shift when they've been thinking about something for a long time and have finally found the words. Dad, can I ask you something? Yes. When it's all done, when the whole thing is built the way you want it, what do you want people to call you? The question sat in the room. It filled the silence. Mirko looked at him over the top of her tablet. Mina went quiet. The building seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the generators, the whisper of the ventilation, the distant sound of the city breathing around them. The Shredder, Izuku, looked at his daughter, at the model she was building, at the angles she kept getting wrong because the original cavern had been so massive, so impossible, that a child's hands couldn't hold the scale of it. He reached across the table, his hand, no gauntlet, no blades, just his hand, scarred and splinted and human, guided her small fingers to the cavern entrance. The angle she'd been struggling with, the one that kept coming out too steep. He adjusted her grip, tilted the piece, held it in place while she pressed it down. The angle was right. The entrance looked like the entrance. The model, for the first time, looked like the memory. Ask me again when it's done, he said. Kurai grinned. The grin was pure. No armor behind it, no faceplate, no empire. Just a girl and her father and a model that was slowly, carefully becoming something real. She went back to work. The Shredder sat back. Mirko's shoulder pressed against his. Mina was already on her phone, coordinating the district requests, her voice bright and fast and alive. The building hummed. The city breathed. The night settled around them like armor, protective, familiar, theirs. Outside, the world continued. Heroes patrolled, villains plotted, citizens went about their lives. The news cycles churned. The task force filed its reports. The government celebrated a victory it hadn't earned. The internet argued about the Pink Death and the Shredder, and the shape of a world that was changing faster than anyone could follow. And underneath it all, in the currents, in the structures, in the flow of money and information and force, in the districts that requested protection, and the civilians who enrolled in defense programs, and the operatives who moved through the shadows, and the soldiers who wore the blade emblem and believed, the Shredder's hand moved. Quiet, total, invisible. The kind of control that doesn't need to announce itself because it is woven so deeply into the fabric of things that removing it would cause the whole structure to collapse. He had lost the cavern. He had lost Krell's ghost, he had lost the Utrom AI and the alien legacy and the hologram that had told him he was worthy. He had not lost himself. He had not lost the people who mattered. He had not lost the work. The work continued. The empire grew. The shadows held. And somewhere at a table in an undisclosed location, a man who had been a frightened boy sat with his daughter and his partner and his soldier and his family, and the line of his mouth, just barely, just enough that the people who loved him could see it, curved upward. The same as always. The same as it would always be.
Huge salute to the legends fueling this journey. Your support is the engine behind everything we do. Whether you're on the front lines or reaching for the stars, you make this possible. Pro heroes, the elite front line, stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. Dark Eye, DI, Fire 05, Govs LNS. Symbol of peace. The pillars of the community. The titans who keep our foundation solid and the hype at an all-time high. Kelvin Bowman, Mr. Panda, AZ Atros, Dweller of the Deepest Depths, Lone Wolf, Damian Leon, Jacob Rops, Jan L, Christian Mullins, Bully Maguire Shadow, Neo Star Productions, Asael Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Suna Wind 631, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Akuma Noakami, Chris Talley, Remorsefuls, Blackvein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK Eater, Akeno Himejima, Corey Tokars, Jan, Devin Black, Crow, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Ray Von Crimson River, Dante Alistar, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie 60, Ignatius, Albert. Hope of the universe. The ultimate guardians. Celestial tier supporters whose impact shines across the galaxy. Noroi Uzumaki Uchiha, Kishan, Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Debs, LS Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, Ixshoot X50, Greg Green, James, Quan Yin Thompson, Juan, Zeno KJ. And that's how Izuku Midoriya, the boy everyone called useless, built an empire from the shadows, took down All for One, and made the entire hero world kneel without ever asking for credit. If this story hit different, smash that subscribe button. There's more where this came from.